If you want talk, games, and fun all rolled into one, well, you've come to the right place. This is The Game Show, where host Bradley Clarke and his special guests talk about the world of television game and competition shows. But Bradley's guests aren't here to just talk. They came to play a game as well. What will today's topic be? What game does Bradley have planned? There's only one way to find out.
It's time to start the show.
You heard the man. Welcome to The Game Show. And here's your host, the Bradster himself, Bradley Clarke.
That theme song should definitely be on the next edition of Dance Dance Revolution. Thank you so much, Austin Angelo, and welcome everybody to another exciting episode of The Game Show, the talk show all about the world of television game and competition shows. I'm Bradley Clarke, the Bradster, and on today's episode, I welcome on a first-time guest who has a very unique game show career. He works on game electronics for various game shows, meaning without him, buzzers might not ring properly, answers might not be revealed when needed to, and the 21st century features of some of today's most popular game shows would not be as impressive. Speaking of some of today's most popular game shows, these are just a few of the titles that my guest has had the pleasure of working on.
On your mark, get set, go!
These two teams are trying to throw baby kangaroo toys while wearing giant boxing gloves into their partner's pouch.
Try throwing higher, guys.
First team to get two baby roos in their pouch wins $50 in control of the game.
A little higher, there we go. Ooh.
It's quality entertainment. Yeah, I really said that. For the whole family, it's Double Dare.
There we go, one room. Red team, one room. Blue team has none yet.
Sammy, just get a firm grip.
Get high, guys. Grab it and throw up. Don't actually throw up. Oh, so close. Come on, Joey. No. Oh, blue team has one. The next one who gets it is our challenge winner.
Oh, come on,
So close.
Sammy, just one more.
One more. Congratulations, blue team. You got two rooms. Come on over here. Hop on out of that little room. Come on out.
Welcome to Double Dare. And now, here's Liza Koshy.
How you doing? Thank you, and welcome to Double Dare, where players face tough trivia and an outrageous obstacle course to win cash and prizes. Now, I'm your host, Liza Koshy, and joining me is the founding father of Double Dare. He's never chopped down a cherry tree, though. But it's Mark Summers.
Hey, nice to see you. Hello there.
Are you guys ready to play Card Sharks?
Television's biggest deal is back, and the stakes have never been
Higher.
If you want to win big, you have to bet big.
I came to play.
Joel McHale hosts an all-new season of Card Sharks. Returns Sunday, October 18th on ABC.
Tonight, these three players are after big bucks, but they'll have to avoid the whammy as they play the most exciting game of their lives. From Television City in Hollywood, it's time to press your luck. And now, here's the host of Press Your Luck, Elizabeth Banks.
Welcome to Press Your Luck. This is a game where anything can happen as long as you're willing to take big risks to win big bucks.
It's time to play Family Feud. Give it up for Steve Harvey.
I appreciate y'all being here. I hold back. Thank you, folks. I appreciate y'all. Thank you, man. Yeah, dude. I appreciate it, folks. Well, welcome to Family Feud, everybody. I'm your man, Steve Harvey.
You heard correctly. My guest today has worked on Nickelodeon's Double Dare, ABC's Card Sharks and Press Your Luck, as well as Family Feud. However, he doesn't just work on game electronics for television game shows, because my guest has combined his technical skills with his fantastic game show emceeing abilities to create Quaranstream, the game show, a fun and exciting online interactive game show that he hosts weekly on Twitch. Please welcome onto the game show, Lee Eck. Lee, thank you so much for joining me today.
Wow, that was probably one of the best intros I've ever heard. I'm going to have to give you the $20 I promised you for that. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, and because you complimented my intro, I'm going to cut your fee in half to $10.
I'm not going to lie. When you started doing your read there, I was like, who the heck is he talking about? That's not me.
Well, it just so happened that your name ended up landing on the page where it said insert name here.
That witness protection program thing must be working for me, so I'll keep up at it.
Right. Well, it is such a pleasure having you on, especially since I know you're such a game show super fan like myself. And if there's one group of people I love talking to most, it's individuals who know all the hardcore game show facts like myself.
We're going to go down some rabbit holes today, I think.
I love being Alice and going down that rabbit hole. So we are going to talk about your game show career so far, including the various shows you've worked on. And of course, we've got to talk about Quaranstream, the game show. And then later on, for the game of the day, I have created a Bradley Clarke original version of a game show that you worked on for you to play here on the game show.
Oh, you would not do this to me.
Oh, I would. You've hosted for me, technically, so I've got to host for you.
See, that's the reason why I do things like this. I suck at trivia, truth be told, so that's why I'd rather host it. So, boy, this will be fun.
Don't worry. A lot of people are scared of when I say, about a game, and then they do excellent and they had so much fun. So I hope this is the same for you.
I'm just going for personal best record, which is not much at this point.
Well, I mean, if you aim low, there's only up you can go.
Exactly. Set the bar low, and your expectations will just be through the moon.
So are you ready to chat about our favorite television genre together?
Oh my God, yes. I know you couldn't see this, but I am sitting in my desk chair and my feet don't touch the floor because I'm 5'9", I'm very short. And so I just kicked my feet like I was 5 years old. So this will be fun.
The image of you swinging your feet because they don't touch the floor instantly reminds me of Jay Stewart dressing up like the big baby and sitting on that gigantic high chair on the 70s Let's Make a Deal.
It's really funny how those tiny little insignificant moments, probably to Jay, being in the high chair, being the big baby, right? How that resonates with people so many years later. I am constantly amazed at how insanely popular nostalgia is right now. If you would have talked to me, I'd say probably about 5 or 6 years ago. If you would have talked to me about 5 or 6 years ago, I would have said it was a fad and it probably wouldn't have lasted for too long. But here we are in a renaissance of just nostalgia where people just love watching what's old is new and what's new is new again. That to me is one of the most surreal things that I've gotten to do with my very short time with the company that I work for is that they'll say, hey, we're doing the show. It's got this big board. And I immediately, in my little nerdiness, went, oh, that's Press Your Luck. And one of the first questions I immediately asked one of our programmers who does all of our control software and gaming elements and whatnot, I said, is this Michael Larson proof? And he stared at me a little bit and he kind of went, who's Michael Larson? And I was like, oh, I have to explain who Michael Larson is. And so it's so funny how those little things that create moments are so long lasting, even until now, that when you think of something like Press Your Luck, people still think to this day of the Michael Larson incident. You were talking about Jay being in the big high chair. I can literally see this in my head right now. It was a big blue high chair and he had his big oversized bonnet on. It's just amazing how those moments are kind of etched in our head and that we will never forget them going forward. And I said this back in March of last year when the lockdown took effect here in LA. I said I would not be surprised if all you saw on television are revivals of old game shows. And look at where we are. If you opened up a TV guide right now, you'd literally look at any evening day part and go, what year is this?
Well, that brings up a question I was going to ask you later, but I might as well ask it now. Do you think networks should start focusing on creating new game show formats since many of the big name shows have now been rebooted?
I've had this discussion with a couple of folks, and I have to preface this by saying this is my own personal opinion. I think that in 2018, we saw the Double Dare reboot for Nickelodeon. That was a big one, I think, for a lot of people in the game show industry, because that was one of the ones talked about, and it just never got off the ground, and it finally did, and it was incredibly successful. It saw the best numbers that the network had ever seen in like 4 or 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. I think what you're going to see is there will be a hesitation in creating new original content because licensing an IP from a production company, say from like Fremantle or something like that, I kind of compare reviving an old game show to like ramen noodles, right? Like it's instant, it's ready to go. You just pop it in the microwave for a minute and you got yourself something real delicious. But I think that you will start to eventually see original ideas come back. But I think what is incredibly profitable for any network right now is to just do a revival. Fox said that they were going to do Name That Tune. And just before that, they had announced doing You Bet Your Life. Was that the other one that they said they were going to do?
Yeah, with Jay Leno.
Yes, with Jay Leno. And I'm like, You Bet Your Life is one of those shows that are literally in just namesake alone. I could not sit here and talk to you right now, Bradley, and tell you any remote facts about You Bet Your Life. The only thing I know about You Bet Your Life was Groucho Marx and, Say the Secret What. And I know that shtick, and that's about it. But that just goes to show you that even with such a dated property like that networks have a lot of confidence in it and can breathe new life into it.
DeSoto and the DeSoto Plymouth dealers from coast to coast present Groucho Marx in You Bet Your Life. Now, here he is, the one, the only.
Well, here I'm again with a chance for each of our couples to win up to $10,000. And if any of them say the secret word, they can take home an extra $100. And this is the word right here.
And I don't think it's just a copy and paste anymore. You have to add a new element in there to keep it fresh. Press Your Luck added an end game, which is something we'd never seen in the original or even the Game Show Network reboot. That was not something that was there in those versions. And I think that's where the originality comes in. That's where you get those moments where networks will go and producers will go, we don't want to taint the original, but we need to add a little something that would stay true to its essence. I kind of compare it to, had X show never went off the air, here's how it would have evolved in 2021, for example. It seems like game show reboots now are just a natural evolution of what they would have been back in their heyday. So I think that's where they can sprinkle in the originality. But I think in terms of a full-blown original show, I would love to see some original stuff. But I think right now, the biggest point for people is that it's already an existing intellectual property. It's basically ready to go. You kind of just modernize everything and you send it out on its merry little way and you know it's going to be a hit. That's the crazy part, is that you can take a show like Card Sharks, where the premise of the game was you're sitting on an 8. Is the next card higher or lower than an 8? I used to play that game when I was a kid. I didn't know that they would turn that into a game show. And here we are years and years later, and it still works. Or maybe I just have a short attention span. I don't know.
So that begs a question. Would new formats today not be as good as the formats that were created during the 70s and 80s?
No, absolutely not. It's kind of a double-edged sword, especially when you get into the world of game shows, because you have the purist. And I'll admit, I was a bit of a purist. And then I realized the biggest, I don't want to even say this was a piece of advice. I'm trying to think of the phraseology to use for this. But somebody had told me on a show that I was working on, something that just rang with me for the rest of my career was, I know you like this show, but this show isn't meant for you. Like, this is meant for a new generation. This is meant for people that maybe not have seen Press Your Luck or Card Sharks or Name That Tune back when it was originally airing. So it's also where the fandom gets, like, oh, they didn't do this, or why was Bit a Note the second game in the new Name That Tune reboot? I don't know. It's just how things evolve.
Were the original versions of the game shows that have recently been rebooted the shows that you grew up watching and the shows that inspired you to want to work in the game show industry?
When I was a kid, truth be told, I didn't have cable as a kid, which was good because game shows in the 80s, I was born in 86, were all on networks anyway, so that wasn't really too big of a deal. There were only like a couple of shows that I would have to go over to like my aunt's house who had cable, which was, the big hip thing at the time. I'm like, oh, I can watch, Nickelodeon. Honestly, I think one of the very first memories that I have of watching a game show, and this is such a bizarre story, I've never actually told the story out loud before. I remember being very young, and The Price is Right would come on, and I'd be at my aunt's house, and she was an avid watcher of The Price is Right, as many people are. And there was something about the opening sequence where the Come On Down music would actually make me cry. Apparently, I was like 3 or 4. And my aunt would tell me, when you were younger and we would watch The Price is Right, you would cry during the whole start of the show. I'm like, really? I would do that? because like now I don't even think anything of it. I have it in my gym playlist that I have on my phone. It's just really funny that I'm like, oh man, I can't believe I did that. That was a real thing. But other than that, I love Price. It was just that opening music. Just for some reason, I guess it was the frequency. I don't know what that was. I remember watching Classic Concentration. That was the good one. I think by far, hands down, the biggest inspiration that I had was Double Dare on Nickelodeon. I was enamored with that show, not because of the mess or anything like that, and not that I ever wanted to be a contestant on that show as a kid. I was enamored with the way that that show made you feel a part of the production as a viewer, and that is such a hard thing to pull off. Mark is incredibly smooth at what he does on Double Dare. And he always made sure that you were in on the joke with him. And I absolutely love that. And like I said, when I was growing up, I didn't have cable, so I'd have to go over to my aunt's house and I'd watch Double Dare. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, I don't want to be on the show. I want to work for that show, because I felt like Mark would always let you in on the gag and, kind of show you the behind the scenes. And he would always kind of banter with Harvey. And it was such an open atmosphere. And I really admired that. And that was really what kind of spearheaded me into the world of, is this really a profession? Because I didn't even know people actually got paid to do that. I thought they were just, because I was a kid like everybody else, I was like, oh, these people just like to goof around and have fun like I do. And I think it's only incredibly appropriate that Double Dare was the first big show that I got to work on in my current position. And I'll be honest with you, Bradley, I remember when I heard the Double Dare reboot was happening in 2018, I was incredibly excited. I was actually working on Deal or No Deal for CNBC at the time. And we were doing casting at that time. And I remember, ironically, tell me how ironic this is. I was sitting in Soundstage 21 at Universal Studios in Orlando. Anybody that wants to be an uber nerd right now will know Soundstage 21 has a little significance to it. Nickelodeon was kind of part of that significance. And I remember getting a notification on my phone on Facebook that had just said who the new host was. And it was Liza Koshy. And I was reading the article and I just went, who? I'll admit, I was being a purist at that point. And I was saying, if it's not going to have Mark, da-da-da-da-da. And then I thought, you know what? I'm now at a point in my life where I can make this fantasy a reality. I immediately decided right then and there, I need to go work on this reboot. I didn't care if I cleaned the toilets. I was determined to work on that show. And I remember calling in a bunch of favors from a bunch of people. And I remember sending my resume constantly to different producers and whatnot. I was even okay with just being a production assistant. I just wanted to be a part of that history. And I finally got the big, hey, I'm so sorry, we're fully staffed phone call. But I decided, again, I'm in a position as an adult now. I can fly out to LA. I can go, at least see tapings and, again, be a part of the legacy and associate with the history and whatnot. And actually, when I got a phone call, I will never, ever forget, which was, hey, we've got this Nickelodeon show. What's your tech experience like? My tech experience? I don't really do technical stuff anymore. At that point, this was 2018. So I just finished contracts on cruise ships and other things. And I was kind of more on microphone type things. And I was like, well, I don't really do technical things. And long story short, I had sent in my resume and got a phone call back probably about 20 minutes after I had just gotten a phone call from the Hail Mary pass that I threw to try to work on the show. And I was just told, hey, I'm sorry, we're completely staffed. I'm so sorry. But hey, come out to LA. We'd love to see you and we'll set you up. And I'm like, okay, I was a little bummed. And then I got a phone call about 20 minutes later, which was who is now my boss. And he said, hey, I've got this show for Nickelodeon and it's kind of short notice. And I said, hold on, please do not tell me this is the Double Dare reboot for Nickelodeon. I said, because if you do, you are about to hear a 30-year-old man scream and cry and probably lose his mind. And he goes, it is. Why? And I legit threw the phone down. I started crying. True story. I started crying and then I picked the phone back up. Thank God I had hit mute on my microphone so my boss didn't hear this. And I picked it back up and I said, so when do you need me? And he literally was like, well, we needed you yesterday. Can you come out tomorrow? I was like, oh my God, okay, this really can't be happening right now. And I was so not convinced I had landed the game show that inspired me as a kid that I genuinely, Bradley, I did not believe I had an offer to work on the show until I received my offer letter. That's crazy. I legit thought somebody was yanking my chain the entire time because they knew when I was a kid, I really idolized Double Dare and that Mark was kind of the reason why I wanted to be a host and get into all of that. I thought, man, they got to be messing with me. And I did not believe it until I had landed in LA. I got into my Airbnb and I received paperwork. And I'm like, this is not my life right now. So the fact that the show that I really watched as a kid, sorry, kind of went fast forwarding through this, but really the one game show that I watched regularly was Double Dare on Nickelodeon. And if you would have told 8-year-old Lee he'd be working on the show that inspired him to get into television, he'd tell you he's absolutely out of his mind. Really, other than that, I mean, I'd watch Price is Right from time to time, Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune, but that was really the inspiration behind a lot of things. And, you know, it's really funny, just kind of go on a side spurt here, and I'm sure you can relate to this as well. When you're a fan of something, you don't want to give the wrong impression to somebody. You don't want somebody to go, oh my gosh. It's like, you've seen the show Star Trek, right?
Sure, yeah.
So they call their fans Trekkies, right? Like, oh man, you don't want to be like a Marky. I don't know. Just trying to think of something to associate with it there. And really for a long time, I never really associated too much with other people that were really passionate about game shows and whatnot. And then it literally went from no association at all to being thrown right in the middle of it. Like there was no middle ground there. So that's why I kind of had to fast forward through all of that, because I wasn't really like a hardcore, like I can tell you episode 14 from 1987. I can't do that. But like you said, game shows have that really interesting resonance that stick with people for so long. And then when you finally get to work on the show that you absolutely idolized as a kid, it is a feeling that I wish everybody could feel.
By the way, episode 14 from 1987 had Pickett, they had the Sunday Slide, it had Blue Plate Special, just to let you know.
And they had it hanging in the little arm flag holder instead of actually tucked in.
Right.
Oh, man. Game shows for me, I was very particular. I didn't want a lot of people, especially when I was a kid, because I loved playing board games. I loved video games. I still love video games, but especially then, I was enamored with games. And nobody in my family, not to have like a poor Lee moment here, but nobody in my family wanted to play board games with me. So I'd have all these board games and I'd have to get a friend. And at that time, you actually had to pick up the phone and call people. Imagine that. And I was enamored with that because games are just a way for you to escape from reality. And although that can be a good thing, it could also lead to stumbling into this career, which is kind of how that happened for me. I had no idea what I do currently exists professionally. Now it's like, okay, we're going to develop the big board for Press Your Luck. I'm like, I'm sorry, what? This is a thing? Okay. All right, have fun.
So you said that you didn't do any tech stuff when you were offered the job on Double Dare. So does that mean you basically had to complete a technology crash course during pre-production?
Well, okay, so what I do specifically is a lot of proprietary technology. Basically, we use technology in ways that we don't normally would use them, which is fun for me because that basically means I get to break stuff all the time. The one thing that we do rather consistently was, it wasn't necessarily like, oh, do you know how to use X system? Because all of our systems are proprietary systems. They're all designed in-house. We very rarely use a third-party piece of software or something to that effect, unless we absolutely have to use it. So when they had asked me, they're like, what's your tech experience like? I think at that time, I had worked at the Nickelodeon Resort in Orlando because I was a huge Nickelodeon fan. And I remember moving, I went to high school and college in North Carolina. I got my associate's degree in broadcasting. And I was like, well, I need to fly the coop and go work at Nickelodeon Studios. That was a dream of mine. And I remember having about $60 in my pocket, and I was 18 or 19, I think. And I had arranged for an interview at Universal Studios, as they called them spielers, for the attraction Earthquake and the Magic of Effects. And I didn't even really know what it was. It was just kind of my way of saying, well, if I can get into Universal, then I can eventually make my way to working at Nickelodeon Studios. Legitimately, about 4 weeks after I moved down there, Nickelodeon had closed up shop. So yeah, that was fun. But then the Nickelodeon Resort opened kind of down the street, as they say in Kissimmee, and we did nightly shows for the resort guests. So I was hired there to be an entertainment technician, but that's really not what, I mean, I had to deal with the lighting, I dealt with audio, I dealt with show control, which is primarily what I do now in my current position. I remember pouring the slime in the blimp at the hotel, like all the time. Like I had some of the weirdest side gigs that I did at Nickelodeon. There would be nights where I would finish, I'd get in my car and I'd put my hands on the steering wheel and I'd look at my hands and it would look like I have jaundice just because of like the amount of slime that I had to deal with on a daily basis. So I had a little bit of technical experience from Nickelodeon. And then through my eventual progression with Universal, I did a lot of, I guess you could call it show control. I don't know if that's what they would call it, but basically it was show control for the attraction Poseidon's Fury at Islands of Adventure, where their character Taylor runs through a temple. It was very Legends of the Hidden Temple-esque, strangely enough. And I partially controlled and enabled the flame effects that they had, the water mortars that kind of went off. And just basically, if anything faulted or malfunctioned, I would be kind of the first one running down there on scene to either, make sure everybody gets out safely or fix whatever it needs to while the show is actually going on. Some cases we could do that. So that was really the only technical experience that I had prior to that point, because everything after that, I had started working on cruise ships and I was really more focused on being a host. I had fun with the technical side. Now it was time to see what it's like to be the face of everything. So I hadn't done anything really technical for quite some time. And then they were like, so what's your tech experience like? I'm like, oh, this could be fun. I'm like, I make things go boom at Universal. They're like, oh, okay. You know how they say, like, describe your job poorly? I think that would be the way that I would describe my job at Universal, is that I made things go boom.
So when you worked on Double Dare, did you get to continue that legacy of yours of making things go boom, or did you control more of the trivia aspects of the show?
For Double Dare, I had the coolest job in the world. I'm always constantly amazed at what my company will let me do. So we all do game electronics. So basically, if it's some sort of a game element that you would see in the broadcast, there's usually somebody behind it. It gets a little complicated when it comes to what exactly we control, but I'd say about 99.9% of the time, if it's related to a gameplay element, like someone hitting a buzzer or something like that, if it's tied into an element, so like when you hit a button and a light goes off, that's us. So for Double Dare, I think we did the scoreboards, we did the clock, and then we also did the questions that flew in and out from the lower third. And then we also controlled the graphic that was behind Liza, because that's just all tied into game elements, and it makes sense for us to do it because we basically kind of controlled everything else on that show. And then we also provided to Liza in her podium a little info screen that kind of told her who was in control, what the score was, so she didn't have to like look around a contestant's head and go, oh, you've got $200. She could literally just kind of glance down at her screen and she'd be able to see exactly where we are in gameplay. Though I was a little disappointed because I thought the one thing I would get to control would be to play the sound of the end of the round. And I did not get to do that. That was played in the booth. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little upset with that. Out of all the things that I got to do, I got to start the clock, I got to start the physical challenge music that went along with it. The one thing I didn't get to do was signal the end of the round, because one of the things that I learned very quickly with game electronics is we do not make any judgment calls. That's not our job. Our job is to literally facilitate the flow of gameplay. Which is why I'd say pretty much every show that we've ever done, we would always give a judge's box to producers that would sit nearby us. And they're the ones that make the call on whether or not a question is correct or incorrect. So for Double Dare, I would fly the question on, and then I would literally just sit there. And the only time that I would do something was when the contestants would say dare or double dare, because we would pop up a graphic behind them. But as far as like judging the actual answers or what was acceptable for an answer, that was all producers that set off to the side, and they made those decisions, which is kind of nice because basically I get to play a game. It's kind of one of the coolest gigs in the world, is just sit back and just kind of play along with the game.
And what I loved about the contestant podiums and the clock is that although the numbers are digital, the font looked exactly like the analog font from the original Double Dare.
Okay, so there's a lot of things I can't talk about, unfortunately, because they are proprietary information. However, the one story I will share with you was my admiration for the Double Dare clock on the reboot. And I remember being on the tech deck because basically for the first season, I was invited out and I kind of just took a secondary approach because somebody else was operating the game at the time. And I was kind of just learning, right? I was kind of the shadow. And then for season 2 is when I officially took over the game control for that. So the one thing that I was really enamored with was I was like, man, that clock is detailed. Like it had like the little intricacies of like the actual analog clock back in the day. And our programmer was there and I was talking about that. And I said, did you watch Double Dare as a kid? I mean, that's incredibly detailed. And he's like, no, truth be told, I'd never seen an episode a day in my life because he's from the UK. And they had Double Dare in the UK, but it looked nothing like what we had here in the States. And I was like, so how did you model that clock perfectly? And he said, I watched a bunch of old episodes online. And so he literally studied the clock and all of its little intricacies and created the clock that you see. I will also tell you a little insider information. The clock on the Double Dare reboot actually has a back to it. You never see it, but it is actually there. It's not very impressive to look at. But at one point, I'm assuming at one point they wanted to replicate the old analog clock turning around like it did on the original show because it was the physical set piece that they had. So I'm assuming at one point during like initial development, they wanted the clock to rotate, but then they scrapped the idea. But obviously that element was already built, so it just remained there because it's a 3D graphic, so you would never have any reason to see the other side. But it does actually have a backside to it, which I thought was fascinating.
Well, with that unseen clock background that you just described, I think you might have just one-upped Double Dare 2000 when it comes to Double Dare reboot nostalgia.
So Double Dare 2000, all right, I'm going to get on my soapbox for a second. Double Dare 2000 gets kind of unfairly treated because in order to be nostalgic about something, you have to have a reason to miss it. And unfortunately, I think even Mark said this himself, was that they had done so many episodes of Double Dare, they did over 500 episodes, that they had enough to last in reruns forever. And they did. I mean, it was airing on Nickelodeon kind of in the early morning in the late 90s. And then you also had the Nick Gas channel that was starting to air those episodes along with a bunch of other classic Nickelodeon shows. And then all of a sudden, Nickelodeon says, we're going to bring back Double Dare. And like, well, wait, did it ever go off the air? Because to a kid, you didn't know that, right? You were just like, oh, this is cool. We didn't know that as kids. And then Double Dare 2000 comes along. And then all of a sudden, it kind of broke the rules of, well, that's not Mark Summers. This is just a big old phony. When you step back and you look at Double Dare 2000, it was actually a very faithful reboot. It was incredibly faithful.
On your mark. Get set. Go!
These two teams are cranking it up, trying to be the first to get their boot to kick the bucket. The first team to pound the pail and douse their pal gets control of round 1 on the show where we're always on a gap kick. Double Dare 2000!
Oh, the red team!
And now, here's your host, Jason Harris!
Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, folks. Everybody's covered in slime to start the show today. Welcome to Double Dare 2000, where we have gone gacky and we are celebrating the goose. And that is because this is Double Dare 2000, and we have the all-new, say it with me, folks, Triple Dare Challenge.
Unfortunately, not enough time had passed in order for people to go, yeah, remember that Double Dare show where you did the obstacle course and you picked the big nose and stuff like that? Not a lot of time had passed. So you had, I think they did 65 episodes of the original, and it kind of just got pushed off to the wayside. There was supposed to be a second season of Double Dare 2000, but that never ended up happening, which is funny because when we did the Double Dare reboot in 2018, we had contestants from the original Double Dare. And I thought, the purist in me would have thought, okay, we're only going to have people from Mark's version. And we actually had contestants from Double Dare 2000. And I think in one of the episodes that we had, we actually showed a clip, or I think a photo of the mom that was on Double Dare 2000 at the time. And I was like, wow, this is like the only time they'll acknowledge that Double Dare 2000 even existed.
So the Double Dare reboot took the show on the road one time to the Super Bowl and actually played a number of the obstacles at Super Bowl 53 in Atlanta for a special episode.
This Super Bowl Sunday, what happens when you combine the messiest game show on TV with the biggest game in the world? You get the messiest, biggest competition ever. Don't miss Double Dare at Super Bowl, Sunday, February 3rd at noon, everywhere you find Nickelodeon.
Did you get to travel with the show to the Super Bowl in 2019?
I did. And what was really interesting is we had finished the first season, and I think it was back in September or October, I think. And I was told that there weren't really any other shows lined up for the end of the year. So, you're more than welcome to take other gigs, and we'll call you whenever there's something that comes up. So I had actually taken a contract with Norwegian Cruise Lines to be their assistant cruise director. And the contract was for 3 months. And they sent me out to Hawaii. And it was great to kind of be back in the role of working on cruise ships, because it had been 2 or 3 years since my first little endeavor with working on cruise ships. And I think I finished my contract in January of 2019. And I had heard through the grapevine that Double Dare was about to go on the road, but for what reason, they would not explain to me. And it was literally 2 days after I got home, and I got a phone call, and they said, hey, you can't say anything publicly about this, but Double Dare is going to the Super Bowl. Do you want to join? And I was like, yes. So I actually drove out to Atlanta, because at that time I was still based in Florida. I was in Orlando. So I actually drove out to Atlanta, and we weren't there for very long for Game Electronics. I think we were there for like 2 or 3 days, maybe. It was so interesting because they put us in the NFL experience, the big amphitheater that they have, and they have like a bunch of exhibits and stuff like that. And they put us in this replica of the football field or something like that. And obviously it wasn't meant to have a game show come in and set up shop there. So we were set up like off the middle of the field. So if a camera were to have turned around at any point in time, you would have seen us sitting there at this fold-away table with no tablecloth, no nothing. And they went, here, just set up here. We pulled out our equipment, and we're pulling out our rigs over AstroTurf. Boy, AstroTurf, that's some serious stuff. And it does not like when you put thousands of pounds of equipment on top of it. Suddenly, wheels don't like to work. And I remember sitting in this area, and we were set up and ready to go. And they started bringing in the obstacles. And I went, how the hell are we going to do this show? Because it was literally out in the open, and there was no covering what was behind us. And then I think they just decided to let everybody who was in the venue at the time kind of stand around the back to kind of fill in the awkwardness. But it made for some really funny moments, because for continuity, you would actually see some points where the post-production team would insert audience cheers, and then they'd cut back to a different camera angle, but that audience wasn't in that location. But what was really interesting is it wasn't because post didn't check the footage or whatever. It was because we were in an active experience. People were just walking up, seeing what we were doing, and then would just walk away. So you would see these shots with like audience cheering, and then you'd see a shot with one of the teams contemplating the answer to the question, and you would see in the background all of a sudden just nobody there. And that was because there was no audience seating for that show. It was very interesting. And I remember the fact that originally the obstacle course was going to be 60 seconds. And then we ran the obstacle course, and we realized that the football players have never seen Double Dare a day in their lives. And the decision was made to let them just finish the obstacle course. In fact, I remember the reason why I think they had 9 obstacles for the Super Bowl special, 9 or 10, I can't remember. But I remember I was like, well, why are we doing so many? And the producers were convinced that the football players were going to just annihilate the obstacle course. You know, they're big, muscular guys. They're just going to own it. They got stuck at the locker obstacle, which I believe was like obstacle 2 or obstacle 3, if I'm not mistaken. So the decision was made as it was going on. So a little fun inside information for you. If you're looking really closely at that episode, you'll notice the clock in the back is actually showing 0 seconds at one point. Just because the nature of these camera angles, you can't cover everything all the time. So I think somebody was in Liza's ear and said, just let him finish the obstacle course. So they ran the obstacle course. And I think it was the only time, because we were playing the obstacle course music, because doing an on-location event like that, resources are condensed into a very small team. So a lot of that kind of fell on us. And I remember time ran out, the horn sounded, and I went, well, that's it, we're done. And then they went, play the music again. And I went, I can't do that because if I play the music again, the clock resets to 60 seconds. And they were like, well, we can't obviously show the clock at 60 seconds again because there'd be continuity issues. So I remember going into the computer and finding the wave file and just playing the wave. It was so archaic the way that I was doing it. And then thank God they finished the obstacle course in less than 90 seconds. So then what they did is after both teams ran, they did a pickup shot of Liza just saying, okay, you have 90 seconds to complete the obstacle course. So fun fact, the original obstacle course was supposed to be 60 seconds, but because they both got stuck on that damn locker, they upped it to 90 seconds. But that decision was made literally on the spot as that was happening. And I would have thought that they would have created an alternate version of Mount St. Double Dare for this just being a one-off special. No, they legit, those are all the real obstacles that were in LA. They loaded them onto a semi-truck and brought them out to Atlanta. So all of those obstacles were completely authentic, which was really a nice touch because they could have just made the live tour version of Mount St. Double Dare, which is like, oh, it's cute, it's adorable, it's tiny. But no, they actually really brought it out. And I just remember them running out of time and they're like, well, now what do we do? We're like, just let them keep running. I'm like, all right, have fun with that.
Those athletes may play in the biggest game of the year, but can they conquer Pickett? That's the real test of life.
I remember the producers were like, we are convinced they're going to finish it in like 20 seconds. They were convinced, which is why they added the additional obstacles that they added. And I went, I don't know about that. I mean, obviously, I have no say, but in my head, I'm like, I don't know about that. Sure enough, obstacle 3, they got stuck. And I went, well, you could have done 8 obstacles in 90 seconds and they still wouldn't have gotten it. That was a lot of fun. They put us in like a VIP room. You know, like I guess in a normal game, they would have like the VIP viewing area. That ended up kind of being like our production offices. And I just remember it was very chaotic because we had to deal with an event going on. So we had to set things up and people would just walk up to us going, hey, what are you guys doing? And like, we're taping a game show. And then I think someone had said, well, what if we give the people that come and stand around, what if we give them bandanas? And then I said, why do I get Guts vibes from this? Because, you know, like on Guts, they would have the little towels that they would twirl around. And then all of a sudden on the Double Dare Super Bowl special, they're twirling around the little bandanas. I went, well, this is kind of appropriate.
And while you were at it, you should have gave them all pendants of life as well.
I have a 3D printer, and one of the first things that I tested to 3D print, obviously for me, was a pendant of life. And so I 3D printed one, and then I spray painted it gold and, you know, kind of detailed it and aged it and whatnot. You swear up and down, it looks like the real thing.
Moving on from Double Dare, next I want to talk about Family Feud. And you worked on the current season of the show, which is syndication season 22. However, prior to working on this season's game electronics, didn't you work on Family Feud years ago, but in a different position?
Okay, so yeah, this is where things get kind of weird in my story. So my first experience with Family Feud was actually back on Steve Harvey's first season as host. They were taping it at Universal Studios in Orlando, and I had just finished a couple of months prior, My Family's Got Guts. That was the very first game show I ever got to work on, was the Nickelodeon reboot of Guts. And I had learned through the grapevine, because I was still working at Universal at the time, that they were going to be holding family auditions for Family Feud. And I went, well, if they're doing auditions here, I think they're going to be taping here. So I remember emailing the casting email, and I said, I don't want to be on the show. Trust me, you don't want to see my family. We wouldn't do so hot. But I said, I'm local to Orlando. I'm familiar with the facilities. I'd like to work for you guys. So we did casting. I was like a casting associate. I kind of helped out doing the auditions and whatnot. And then I was asked to stay on for the actual tape days. And I moved into booking audiences. So we would go out into Universal Studios and pull people in. And basically, I would just stand there with a megaphone along with my buddy Chad. And we would just say, free air conditioning for 2 hours. Come this way. We very rarely mention that it was Family Feud because people come to a theme park. They spend their hard-earned money. The last thing they want to do is watch a game show. So we kind of had to like think outside of the box and go, what if we just said air conditioned and seats for 2 hours? But the catch is you can't leave when we start. Oh, and by the way, it's Family Feud. I'd have stacks of tickets just handing them out, and it worked. And so we did that. And at that time, my current boss was working on the show, but not in the capacity that we are in now. He was the game operator for Family Feud. And I remember having like 1 or 2 interactions with him. And I was young and it was my first real big syndicated show. And I remember walking up to him and I said, so what do you do on the show? And he's like, oh, I'm the guy that flips the answers over on the game board. I was like, wow, that's really cool. And he's like, yeah, you should come up and check it out sometime. And so I remember kind of getting a very brief, like, here's kind of what I do type thing. And that was the only interaction that I had with him. Fast forward to 2018 when I got the phone call from him to do Double Dare. It was that interaction that I had with him that he remembered me this whole time. I hadn't spoken to him in years. Quite literally, since Family Feud in Orlando, I hadn't spoken to him. Maybe like once or twice on Facebook. That was about it. But it was that one interaction that I had with him in the Orlando version of Feud that made him think of me all of those years later. So, holy cow, it's one of those you'll never know who's watching you type moments. But yeah, I got my start with Family Feud in booking audiences because they didn't have on-camera audiences or anything like that. So we used theme park guests, which was oh so much fun in the middle of summer too, because it doesn't rain in Orlando at 3 o'clock every afternoon. What are you talking about? And that was really the last TV show that I did for quite some time. And then that's when I kind of did the Nickelodeon resort for a little bit and cruise ships and all of that fun stuff. Family Feud, my real association with it now is the live tour. So when we relaunched the Family Feud live tour back in 2019, and we did Family Feud Live Celebrity Edition, and my boss called me and said, hey, we're going to send you out on the road. And I went, what? And they're like, yeah, apparently Family Feud's doing a live show and we're going to send you out to run the game. And I went, I've never ran Family Feud before. They're like, well, you're about to learn. And I literally had like a crash course on how to do Family Feud, which when you see the TV show, you kind of know how it works.
So you ended up being the person that flips the answers.
Yes, on the live show, I was the guy that flipped over the answers and did the strikes and typed in the answers for fast money and whatnot. And what I learned on that, interestingly enough, on the live tour, it was me, myself, and I. So when we were doing fast money, for example, I would be typing in the answers, running the clock, and then I think we gave the producer on the floor a button to do the ba-ba, the duplicate answer noise. And I thought that was just kind of how business as usual was. And then I did my first celebrity Family Feud in LA when we were taping that for ABC. And I was just kind of there as support. We have another game operator whose name is Dennis. He's a fabulous guy. He's one of the funniest guys in the world, which, fun fact, he was the game operator for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And he's the guy that received a little bit of camera time on the Jimmy Kimmel reboot recently, where they're like, oh, we'll actually show you the guy who does 50-50. Yeah, that's Dennis. I was like, dude, you're now like SAG-AFTRA eligible. That's fantastic. So he is normally the operator for syndicated Family Feud as well as the celebrity Family Feud. And then I remember kind of standing back watching a taping, and a contestant comes up to do fast money, and then a producer comes up and sits next to Dennis and has a keyboard. And I'm like, wait a minute, you don't type the answers for fast money? He's like, no, why would we do that? I'm like, oh, on the live tour, it was just me, myself, and I. He goes, no, that's way too much work. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I basically proved we could do this solo. And he's like, yeah, don't say it too loudly or they'll make me do it solo. So it literally takes a village just to do fast money. And here we were on the tour doing it live, where there is no stop downs. There is no, hey, let's try that again. It was, you've got 20 seconds. Good luck, schmuck. Type your answers. And fun fact, we had a survey question that we would do in rehearsals right before they would open up the house for the paid audience. And the fast money question was, name something that you would put on a salad. And obviously everybody would always say,
salad dressing.
No, croutons. Come on, Bradley. But more times than not, they would either say dressing or they'd say croutons. I learned that I do not know how to spell the word crouton because I would type it C-R-U-T-O-N. And I did this time and time again, every single rehearsal. And finally, somebody noticed that I was misspelling the word crouton. And they're like, crutton? What's a crutton? Crutton, what are you talking about? And they're like, look at what you put. I went, isn't that how you spell crouton? And they're like, no, it's C-R-O-U-T-O-N. So fun fact, there is no spell check on Fast Money.
Well, that brings up another question I wanted to ask you. When you did have to type in the answers for the Fast Money board, was it nerve-wracking because you had to make sure the answers were spelled properly, as well as making sure you accurately hear what the contestants said at the same time?
Well, in the live show, yes. Like I said, everything is happening in real time. There is no stopping. In a syndicated Family Feud or celebrity Family Feud, there would be sometimes moments where they would finish Fast Money, we'd ring the bell, and then we'll take just a moment, less than 10 seconds, to look over all the answers to make sure they were spelled correctly. If it's a word that should be shown as one word or two, different things like that. Like the word hot dog, for example. I had always known hot dog to be one word, but apparently it is two words. But either are acceptable, but that's a whole other discussion. And then really, as Fast Money is happening, even on the taped episodes that you see, it's kind of happening in real time. So you'll get all the answers typed in as the contestants are doing it. The executive producer of Feud, she has a little button that she just hits for the duplicate answer or the time's up, the ding or the buzz. And so it's a very coordinated effort on a taping. On the live show, it is literally me, myself, and I. And there would be times where I remember we were doing the live show and I guess we had a drunken guest come up and start talking to our producer and we were doing Fast Money. So it's let's get 25 seconds on the clock, please. Ding. And you can't duplicate any of your partner's answers. If you do, you'll hear this sound and I'm waiting for the producer to press his button. I don't hear anything. And I was like, hey, hit your button. And he's like, I'm not hearing anything. So I was like, okay, I'll hit the button for him. Turns out he's dealing with this intoxicated guest and he is completely off headset. He is off his comms. And so now all of a sudden, on top of typing in answers, making sure all the points are there, I am now making the call on whether or not that's a duplicate answer. So I had literally my right hand, because I use my right hand for writing. So I figured I can type with one hand. So I had my right hand typing. I had the button in my left hand, and then I had the mouse next to me. And the only time that I would have to use the mouse is when time is up, because there's a little button to click for time up. And I just remember that being the most manic thing I have ever done in my life. Like, that was absolutely insane. And in front of the audience, smooth as silk. You'd never know anything was different. But meanwhile, I'm like, where were you? He's like, I'm sorry. We had somebody that was really intoxicated and kept asking me all these questions. He wouldn't leave me alone. Oh, okay. But the syndicated and the tapings and the celebrity feud is far more coordinated. The live show, anything can happen.
So I'm presuming on the TV version of Family Feud, Dennis is the main guy in terms of game electronics, and you're his right-hand man if he ever needs assistance?
Yes. Dennis is the guy that's been doing Feud basically since we started doing the game electronics for Feud. And so basically, if he ever needs to have some time off or isn't feeling well or whatever the case is, I would kind of be like the pinch hitter. I would kind of go in and jump in for him if need be. I was actually out there in Atlanta a couple of months ago when Feud came back post-pandemic with the new extended face-off podium. And so we had flown out to Atlanta. It was me and my boss. And I was like, can I jump in and do a show? And they're like, yeah, go ahead, go for it. So I actually ran a show or two while I was out there in Atlanta. And it's nerve-wracking. Family Feud is good because it's relatively slow-paced. You've got Steve making the jokes, and there's quite a bit of banter in between when an answer needs to flip or a strike or whatever the case is. However, on a show like Press Your Luck, where 90% of what you're seeing on television is controlled by me, that is a different story. That is intense.
Well, since you mentioned Press Your Luck, let's go ahead and talk about that show next. Now, being that you work in game electronics and the core element of Press Your Luck is a giant electronic game board, does this mean working on Press Your Luck is the highest honor that someone in your field can have?
Are you asking, is Press Your Luck like the World Series of game electronics?
Pretty much.
Yes. Oh my God, yes. The interesting thing about Press Your Luck is if you sat down and you read the rules to Press Your Luck, you would know that the rules make no damn sense at all. I swear Carruthers was just making stuff up as he went along and just was like, oh, when you pass, it's got to go to the player with the most money, but then they get to go last in round two. Good Lord. So when they asked me, they're like, you obviously know a lot about the show, so you're going to kind of be with the producers to help create the elements for the board. And I remember one of the first questions that I asked our programmer was, is it Larson proof? And he had no idea who Michael Larson was. So I explained the Larson situation. And he's like, oh, yeah, no, trust me. There's no way that's going to happen. I am amazed at how that board works. That board is genuinely impressive. And one of the most fun things I would get to do every morning is we would do a system check. So quite literally, I would turn on our rack, which controls the graphics and whatnot for the board, and I'd start the control software for the show, and then I'd go and start the board, and then I'd run out to stage, and I'd kind of watch the board, make sure everything looks the way it should be, and make sure business is normal. But then I was like, well, if I'm the guy that starts the board, I have to be the guy that stops the board. So I would go up on the contestant island, and I would go to the middle contestant, which is the person I would have enabled for that, and I would literally play 3 spins every morning. And it was kind of just my tradition. Well, there was also something I also learned about Press Your Luck, which is this. I suck at Press Your Luck. That board is massive when you look at it from the way that the contestant has to look at it. It is really intimidating. So every morning when I would stop it, every single time I'd stop, very first spin, every morning, I would land on a whammy.
Absolute worst at this game.
It was like clockwork. And what was really funny is because of the nature of Press Your Luck, that whammy sound, that foghorn, is played through the house because obviously we want the crowd to respond to that wah wah. We want that engagement with that sound effect. So it was kind of a running joke that the first time you would hear the whammy foghorn in the morning, everybody knew that I was taking my first spin of the day. So I am not good at that game at all.
Well, look at it this way. Michael Larson's first spin was a whammy, so all you had to do was hit the whammy and then win $110,237. Brad fact!
That whole story is just incredible to me. And the funny thing is, he did nothing wrong. He happened to own a VCR and recorded shows because that was one of his favorite shows to watch and noticed, hey, there's a pattern here. Needless to say, for the current reboot and even the Game Show Network version, which we didn't have any involvement with because we didn't exist at that time, computers are fascinating. Generating a random sequence and making sure that it's executed correctly. I'll just watch the board in awe sometimes because number one, it's massive, but then just to watch it do what it does. And there was a part where we were talking about situations where if a contestant landed on Pick a Corner, one of the things that absolutely cannot happen in Pick a Corner is for there to be a whammy. Now, in the original, obviously, they had slide projectors and whatnot. So sometimes, somebody may not pay attention and that would be a thing. But for us, it was so, oh yeah, a whammy can't exist in that square. Okay, we'll just set parameters so a whammy will never generate in that square. It's really, really fascinating how that board operates. I will tell you this. We were doing season 1 of the show, and obviously there was a lot of hype around it, and a lot of fans came in and saw the tapings. Remember when you could go to a game show taping? Those were good days. And I was at Craft Services, and I was grabbing like a soda, and I was just talking with a couple of people that were there that day. And this guy walks up to me with a little spiral notebook, and he interrupts us in the middle of our conversation. He goes, hey, are you the guy that runs the board on Press Your Luck? I went, yeah. And he goes, oh, okay, cool. I have a couple of notes for you. I was like, oh, okay. Are you the production company? No. Oh, okay. Are you ABC? No. Okay. No offense, my friend, but who the hell are you? And he goes, oh, I'm just a fan who really enjoys the show. I noticed the board did a couple of things, and I was just wondering why it did what it did. I was like, I can't tell you that. He had a notebook of just notes upon notes of the board layout and what was behind each square. I'm like, you have way too much time on your hands. And I was always wondering, I'm like, so if he was taking notes as the show was taping, I wonder if there was footage of just some guy sitting in the back with a notepad, just looking at the board, looking back down, writing his notes and going back up, going, oh, okay, that's good. I see. It really is amazing to me how Michael Larson left such an impact on that show. Number one question I get on Press Your Luck all the time is the board really random? And it is absolutely 1000% random. I don't even know what the hell the board's going to do until I start it. And then in that point, the only person that can stop the board is the contestant. I can't do a damn thing. Once that board is in motion, it is in the contestant's hands. They control their own destiny on that. But I was amazed at how many people, so is the board really random? Yes, it has to be. Well, you know about that ice cream truck driver. Yes, Michael Larson. I'm aware of who that is. No, it is not a pattern. It is very random.
There's no 212-194 on this board.
Oh my gosh, 212-194. I had said that one day. I forgot who I had said that to. I think I said that to our programmer one day. And I was like, 212-194. And he's like, what is that? I was like, oh, that was the light sequence that Michael Larson used to land on big bucks every time and know that he would never hit a whammy. He's like, wow, you are a nerd. And I also remember I did this as an Easter egg. So first and foremost, I'm a fan, just like everybody else is. I have a love and an appreciation for game shows. But one of the cool things that I would do on any show that I did game electronics on, when I did the game control for, is I would put a little Easter egg in for any fans that may be coming to see a taping. And one of the things that I did for Press Your Luck was when they would load in the audience, I would set the contestant islands to reflect the final scores of the Michael Larson episode. So obviously Michael was in the middle with 110,237. And then I had a whammy popped up for him because obviously he had landed on a whammy. Quite literally, when the audience would walk in, they would see what would look like to them a game that had just finished. But if you were a fan and you were paying attention, you would know I'm actually doing an homage to the Michael Larson episode, which goes down in infamy for that show. And I overheard somebody in the audience, because basically when the audience would load in, I would make sure everything's set, and then I would go out on stage just to do a final check with the electronics and whatnot. And I would always kind of keep an ear open just to see if anybody realizes what the significance of $110,237 is. And there was one person that was like, isn't that the score from the guy in the old version? And I was like, oh, good for you. You cracked my Easter egg. For Double Dare, obviously the audience were a bunch of kids. Surprisingly, there were adults there too that grew up watching the original. But for that show, there wasn't really a whole lot that I could display as an Easter egg. So what I did on the last day of the second season, we were taking a crew photo. And on the team arches, the red and blue teams there, I had put, instead of the team names, we came, we saw on the red team. And then on the blue team, I put, and we made a big mess, which is kind of cute when you look at it at face value. But if you want to go uber Nickelodeon nerd right now, when Nickelodeon was taping at the studios at Universal, it was common practice for them to put up a plaque on the outside of the soundstage where that show had taped. And they did this for every single show that ever taped at Universal Studios, Nickelodeon or otherwise. So the very first plaque that actually exists in this little corridor in the breezeway between the sound stages is a plaque for Super Sloppy Double Dare, which says a group of friends got together in this spot in June 1989 and made a big mess. So I thought it would be kind of appropriate for the crew photo to put, we came, we saw, we made a big mess. I specifically remember Mark seeing that and going, how did you know that? I was like, well, you know, I've had my experience in those sound stages. He's like, but how did you remember that? Well, I have a photographic memory. And I think even for that photo on the scoreboards, I put 1986 on the red team and then 2019 on the blue team, just as a little homage. Family Feud, obviously, we're in syndication for the rest of our lives, so there's not really anything that I do as like a fun Easter egg for them. We do get a good laugh every so often if somebody ever answers chicken, because if you're familiar with Family Feud Canada, name Popeye's favorite food. And the woman buzzes in and goes, chicken! We lose our minds every time when somebody says chicken on the show.
All right, no team has reached 300 points, which means we're going to sudden death. Give me Logan, give me Eve. All right, real simple. There's one question, only one answer. Whoever gets it, you're playing for $10,000. That's it. Whoever guesses this wins the game. Here we go. Name Popeye's favorite food.
Chicken! Oh my God.
Show me chicken!
Spinach, Jerry.
Show me spinach!
I thought you meant Popeye's
And did I do anything on Card Sharks? I think for Card Sharks, for season 2, we have the new contestant display, which a lot of people swear, oh, that's because of COVID. It actually had nothing to do with COVID. That idea, it existed as an improvement to season 2 before COVID was even a thing. And I think for Card Sharks, I had put Perry and Eubanks in for the player names one day. And that was my little nod, but there was no audience in for season 2, obviously. So only like a few people got that reference. But yeah, I try to leave like a little Easter egg wherever I go. It's hard to do it, but it does happen every so often.
Now you've got me thinking about fun Family Feud Easter eggs you could possibly use.
Well, Family Feud, okay. So what I did on the live show is it's not really a wink and a nod, but it's one of those if you really knew, you knew. On the Family Coves, where the names are, I would put Hatfields on one side and McCoys on the other side. And that is obviously a reference to the Hatfields and the McCoys doing their own kind of Family Feud, which is kind of the basis of how the name of Family Feud came to be. And I think they even had the descendants of the Hatfields and the McCoys do a Family Feud with Richard Dawson or something like that.
It's time for the 5th game of the Hatfield-McCoy Family Feud Specials. Tied 2-2, the Hatfield family. Dawn, Carol, Sue, Ernestine, Robin, and Sally, ready for action. And the McCoy family. Jimmy, Maureen, Debbie, Regina, and Bo. On your marks, let's finish the Family Feud. With the star of Family Feud, Richard Dawson.
So I think that's what I did for Family Feud. Yeah, that's really all of them. So I try to add like a little, like, if you know, just a little wink and a nod, which is always funny because ultimately there's always somebody that's working in maybe writing or development or a contestant producer or somebody on the shows that I also am on. And they'll be a big game show fan too. And they'll go, oh, I get it. I see what you did there. That's really cool. We always get a kick out of the turkey blooper from the UK version. We always get a good laugh out of that one.
Name something people take with them to the beach.
Turkey.
The first thing you buy in a supermarket.
Turkey.
A food often stuffed.
Turkey.
Any famous snooker player.
Hamilton Higgins.
Let's try again. Any famous snooker player. Your time is out. Yeah. Now, you've got a chance here of making £1,000 and 2 weeks. 2 weeks in Turkey. And I said to you, name something people take with them to the beach. You said. The answer was the first thing you buy in a supermarket. The answer was. And the survey gave you a food often stuffed, you said. And that gave you 21!
Oh, Supermarket Sweep. Oh my gosh. I totally forgot. On Supermarket Sweep, we controlled the displays that are in the carts, and then we also controlled the buzzers. And then we also controlled the monitor that was off screen for them to see the content for the game. So like if we were playing Scrambled Letters, for example, they would see the black screen with the dashes, and it was just very basic, right? I think, because we didn't do a crew photo for that because of social distancing and whatnot, but I think I did put up on the last day. Oh, no, I remember what I did. They had a guy who was playing music on stage, just kind of keep the contestants hyped up and energized. And I was like, considering it's the last day, could you play this for me? And I had the original Supermarket Sweep theme song. And he's like, no, it's not my style, man. It's not my style. I was like, all right, fine, whatever. I have a way of playing sound effects on my side of things. So when we had finished and we were done and they called it That's a Wrap, the DJ was already breaking down his stuff. So I just piped on the Supermarket Sweep music and just had a field day with it. Which, fun fact, on the reboot, the only thing you heard on stage were the sound effects. So the buzz-in, the correct, the incorrect, and times up are the only sounds we actually sent to the floor. I had no idea that they were going to use the song Push It as the theme song. I had no idea they were going to do that because we never heard it. It was actually a really weird moment to do the big sweep and it's completely silent on the stage because there's no music playing. So it's really interesting to hear nothing but squeaking sneakers and the shopping cart wheels just kind of rattling around. So very odd. They just had a clock to look at. Good luck. When you hear the bell, stop grabbing stuff.
Going back to Press Your Luck, one of the differences on the new version is when a contestant hits a prize, instead of Elizabeth Banks automatically revealing the prize's value to the contestant, like Peter Tamarkin would do, she would ask how much is it worth, and a graphic of the prize amount would appear in the center of the game board. So does that mean that you have to load in all of the prize amounts into the computer system before each game begins?
Yeah, she has all of the information. So basically, when we get the shows for the day, they'll say, here's all the prizes that are going into the board. And obviously, it would have all relative information to that. For example, if there was specific copy that Elizabeth had to read, like if it were a vacation, what that vacation included. And that was just producer's choice, right? That was just something that producers wanted to have her say. And then that would also include the value on that as well. And obviously, we would need to know that because when they stop the board and she says, how much is that worth? I reveal how much that's worth. So do you remember the episode that happened on season 2 where the gentleman got really close to winning the $1 million?
I do.
One spin. Okay. One spin for all of that. Oh my God, get the engagement ring right now. One spin. You've got it. This is for the game, for everything.
There's another round?
No.
If these two Teslas are worth $190,000, oh my God! You are winning $1 million right now.
No way.
Oh my God! Don't say that. Are the cars worth? Oh God! $190,000. Oh my God! Are they? Flip it. Oh my God!
All right. So from what I can see, obviously, I have information in front of me that nobody else sees. And so you see the part where Elizabeth is going, did he do it? Did he do it? And like she's got her fingers in her ear because the room just exploded because they would have sworn they had won. And there was so much excitement and everything going on. I looked down at my little cheat sheet and I was like, oh, he's just short. He's not going to make it. And then they were asking me, because I guess obviously there's so much excitement going. They're like, did he do it? Did he do it? Did he do it? And I went, no, he's not going to make it. And I just remember Elizabeth being fed the information that here's how we want you to reveal the moment, build the drama, build the suspense. And then she says, how much is that worth? And I'm just holding. And I'm like, I'm just going to milk this for what it's worth. We're holding, and I reveal it. And there was a 2-second moment where the crowd thought he won, and he thought he won. And then when you see the score update, it was when the reality sunk in, and he was just shy of it. And I, for the life of me, did not want to reveal the amount because I felt like the bearer of bad news. Truth be told, when a contestant lands on a whammy and I have to play the whammy that interacts with the score and whatnot, I don't like playing them. I want a contestant to win lots of money. So it was always really painful to be the guy who has to trigger the whammy, or in the case of the almost $1 million moment, update the score, and then he saw that he was just shy of it. I get into the game just as much as everybody watching at home. I am screaming at the top of my lungs, which I'm sure is incredibly unprofessional with everybody else that's back there with me. But we get really invested into these games because I'm playing a game. I'm not changing lives or anything like that. That's the show itself. But it's always so much fun whenever they're like, I'm going to press my luck. And I just get the board going. And then I will sit there with my hands over my mouth going, oh, please get something good. I am so invested in the whole thing. And then when they get a whammy, I immediately like, oh, come on. And I'm like, well, now this is part of my obligated job description. I have to take the money away from you now. Except for nobody knows it's me. That's the best part. It's kind of like the Wizard of Oz. I am the man behind the curtain.
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Nobody knows it's me. And everybody just thinks, oh, it's the game. Oh, I landed on a whammy. My score gets taken away and the little whammy comes up.
This is the final rose of the night. Take a moment and say goodbye to your money.
Nobody ever puts any thought into the fact that, oh, there's got to be somebody that controls that. That's me. One of the weirdest things to do is to pop up a whammy. There's something about it that I'm just like, this is so wrong. I don't want to take away people's money. But you landed on it. You got to face the consequences.
So you see which whammy is coming up.
The way that works, I get asked about that all the time. So who determines which whammies play? The way that works is most of the time it's one of the producers will give me a list of the whammies that they want to play and any specific whammies that they want to have happen if certain things are mentioned in the get to know you or something like that. And the cool thing is with the way that that all works, and I can't go into too much detail with how it all works, but basically we kind of set up like a whammy playlist per player. So I know what whammy is going to come up and interact with them, but if there was ever a moment where the producer was like, oh, Elizabeth said something really funny, what's the name of that whammy? So like, for example, if a contestant wins a car, they land on the car, 9 times out of 10, I would hear on my headset, make sure their next whammy is the Oprah whammy. Because they just won the car, it would be kind of funny to give the whammies this sense of they're listening to you. They know what you have.
Come on, no whammies, no whammies, stop!
You get a whammy, you get a whammy, you get a whammy. We all get a whammy, and I get a...
Sam, I'm so sorry. Your bank is now back down at 0.
Hands down, the best new whammy is you suck, you suck, you suck, you suck, you suck, you suck.
You suck, you suck, you suck, you suck, you suck, you suck.
I am surprised that one made it. The other one that I'm really surprised that made it was the pregnant whammy.
Hush, you can do it, you can do it. Hush, you're almost there. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and it's all mine.
I'm gonna be honest, I have no idea how that whammy got approved by standards and practices.
That is one I have no idea how that whammy came to be, but it is one of the most awkward things for me to play because I have the master audio feed in my headset. So I hear little things that you guys don't hear when you're watching it on TV, like the little sound effects, you know, the sound mixing and stuff like that. There is a really unsettling noise that happens when Whammet gives birth to the big wad of cash. And oh my God, every time I heard it, I'd have to like take my headphones off. I'm like, this is no. But yeah, the whammies, season 1 was great because they wanted to obviously pay homage to the original, but then obviously introduce new whammies. And then with season 2, we brought back Fang, which was such a subtle nod to the fans. It's like, well, if you remember Fang, you remember.
It's disappointing.
And then I know we never referred to the female Whammy. I think we all affectionately called her Tammy Whammette as just an insider joke for us. But the one thing that is a new addition, which I'm curious to get your thoughts on this because I've had debates over this, is for season 2, we introduced the Whammettes, which are baby whammies. And they were the ones that were on the 0 + 0 still equals 0.
See, little whamlets? 0 + 0 still equals 0.
Here's my question. Do whammies age? And if they do, are the whammies in our version the same whammies that were in the Tamarkin version, but they're just older? Like, do they age? Is that a thing? I'm curious to get your take.
That's a good question. I never thought about that. You would have to still count the whammies from Whammy as a whammy.
Like,
so
that throws a whole wrench into the whole thing. It's like, well, then what are those whammies? Are those like long lost cousins?
Right. Interesting.
So, like, who are they? What do they do? But then we were talking about the pregnant whammy. She gives birth to a wad of cash. So one would then reasonably put 2 and 2 together. I don't know what rating your podcast is, but I'm trying to keep it G-rated here. But does that mean that whammies, they just exist? Do they multiply? How does that work? Trust me, we went down a rabbit hole that I think left us with what is the lore of the whammy. I think we stopped quite literally just short of calling one of the Carruthers family members and just be like, explain to us the legacy of the whammy. Like, do they age?
And you've also got to ask yourself, have the whammies evolved from the Devils featured on Second Chance?
Stop!
Up jumps the devil then, and he just swallowed $600.
That's a whole other thing. Is like, they were originally devils. So does that mean that they are quite literally the spawn of Satan? Like, oh God, see now. I can hear a phone call happening right now. Lee, you can't talk about that. But these are things that keep me up at night.
Don't worry, I think about some of this stuff too, so you're not the only one.
Oh gosh. But Press Your Luck, it's one of the most detail-oriented shows. No pun intended. I have to be on top of my game because there are so many things that are happening. And truth be told, what you're seeing on camera is pretty much live to tape. When a round is happening, it's happening in real time. So that is always really intimidating to know that basically when we go, we're going. I'm basically driving the ship at that point. But on a show like we just did To Tell the Truth, and To Tell the Truth, I had not really watched the current version too often, and I forgot how much fun that show is just to sit and watch. That is such a fun, comedic show. Yes, there's a game involved, hence why we're there to basically pop up the voting results on the imposter screens, but that's really about it. So most of the time on like a show like To Tell the Truth, we're just kind of watching the show like we're an audience member. And then when it's time for the celebrities to cast their vote, that's pretty much the only time we jump in. But then Press Your Luck, it's, whew. I learned very quickly on Press Your Luck, you need to make sure you don't have to go to the bathroom before we start taping. Because the audience warm-up would always say to the audience, hey, if you got to go to the bathroom, now's a good time, because once we start, you ain't leaving. Same thing happens with the game operator, apparently, because you ain't going anywhere.
I have one big question to ask you regarding To Tell the Truth, but first I want to ask you my final Press Your Luck question. If the contestant does win the $1 million during the bonus game, am I correct in saying that the contestant wins whatever additional cash amount equals $1 million when you add up any prizes won during the bonus round?
You nailed it right on the head. So the way that this works is whatever number sends you over the 500,000 in the bonus game, that would count. So let's say it was a prize. Let's say it was the Tesla cars. Let's say it rolled the total over to $512,000. Then from that point, it would be $488,000 in cash. So it just takes whatever is the difference is added in cash. So let's say they get 500,000 on the nose, then they would get 500,000 in cash to make the grand total to go to 1 million. But basically, if they happen to go over, which 9 times out of 10 they will, it's whatever the difference is in cash.
That should be for season 3. If they get exactly $500,000, they get $2 million.
If you get exactly 500,000 on the nose, you should own the show at that point, because that is impressive. Now watch, now that I said that, it's going to happen in season 3.
As I said, I have one big question for To Tell the Truth, and that is, one of the elements that really bothers me about the current version is that they eliminated the foundation of the game, which is all 3 challengers having the same name, and the announcer saying, number 1, what is your name, please? Number 2, number 3.
Number 1, what is your name, please?
My name is Frank William Abagnale.
Number 2.
My name is Frank William Abagnale.
And number 3.
My name is Frank William Abagnale.
To me, the challengers not all saying that they are the same named person defeats the original spark of the show. So Lee, are you in agreement with me, or is that just me being a purist yet again?
I think it boils down to one of those things that when they were developing the show and it kind of came to be, this is pure speculation on my part, I have to be clear with that, but I'm thinking maybe it was just something that was overlooked. And it's funny because I'm trying to even remember, because we just finished the new season recently. Yeah, you're right. They don't say number 1, what is your name, please? Because it's just, I am an underwater basket weaver. I am an underwater basket weaver. I am an underwater basket weaver. Yeah, you're right. They never actually say their names. I don't know why. But yeah, it should be number 1, what is your name, please? Yeah, I'll fight that battle. Yeah, it should be number 1, what is your name, please? Pure speculation here, but I think it was one of those just lost in translation type things where nobody really thought of that. But yeah, I'll fight that battle. Yeah, it should be number 1, what is your name, please? But I also don't think there's an announcer on To Tell the Truth. Is there?
No, there's no announcer, but Anthony's there. He can say, number 1, what is your name, please?
Yeah, I guess. The one thing that I've learned about doing all these shows is that some people in positions of capacity of making those decisions, some people make decisions that I just genuinely do not understand why they reach that conclusion, or I may not understand it at the time. And then when I watch it as a viewer, I go, oh, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, To Tell the Truth should be number 1. What is your name, please? I never even paid any attention to that. I'm writing a strongly worded letter to the producers right now. Don't you worry.
Good. And say that I was involved in it.
Yeah. I'm just the messenger. So let me ask you this. When you saw the reboot for Press Your Luck, were you immediately like, oh, they don't do this. Oh, they don't do that?
Of course.
Okay, so like, what was the one thing that stood out to you? Not necessarily good or bad. I'm not going to put you on the spot like that. But like, what was the one thing that stood out to you as like, wow, that's really different, other than like the end game?
Well, one of the big ones was how the top right corner space says move 2 spaces instead of go back 2 spaces.
You know, there was an interesting debate about that. Originally, when we were doing auditions with potential contestants, obviously they have to play the game. So we had an audition version of the game board and it said go back 2 spaces. And then I want to say someone in a very high position of authority was like, well, we don't want it to make it seem like it was a negative thing. So why don't we just say move 2 spaces instead of go back 2 spaces? Oh, no. I remember what it was. Scratch that. I'm completely wrong. Well, it was partially that because go back sounds a bit negative. How you want to stretch that like taffy, have at it. But the main thing is they couldn't confirm that the board went in a specific direction. So it was one of those things where like you would see go back 2 spaces, you would see the arrow pointing to the left, but then they would be like, so that implies that the board goes one way. And we're like, yeah, you know what? You are kind of right. That is so funny that you mentioned that. There was a whole discussion about that.
Did you personally have any involvement in the board layout developing process since you're the one controlling the board?
When they were coming up with the layouts of the board, I wasn't really involved with that because number 1, I don't make any of those decisions. Again, I just execute the game, make sure it's played the way the producer said they wanted it to be played. I remember them at one point messing around with the number 5555 as a prize value. And there was just something about it. I was like, I don't like the way that looks. It just looked very odd to me. The +1 spin text at the bottom. I had somebody else message me and they're like, it's not the right size. I'm like, I didn't make it. I didn't design that graphic.
What I also find interesting as a difference is on the scoreboard, if a player passes their spins, their pass column shows the number 0 instead of showing nothing like on the original version.
Yeah, I think they put that in because it was one of those things where because it's digital, it just looks weird with nothing being there. You would just kind of expect something to be there. So I think they decided creatively to make the decision that there should be a number in there at some point. Because, I mean, like on the original, you could kind of see the egg crate in the background. It wasn't necessarily lit up, but you would know that that is where a number would be represented there somewhere. So I'm sure that was just one of those. It looked really wonky without it. So they decided put a 0 in there. Press Your Luck was so interesting. I'll tell you the one thing I personally was the most excited on is when they told us that they were going to have the whammies pop up just like they did in the original, because then we had to come up with the electronics to make that happen. And man, that is like a episode of BattleBots. That was intense. There's a lot of things that go into making a whammy pop up. Who knew? You would think it's just like some guy hiding behind there just going push, but no, that was a very overly complicated piece of machinery that did that.
Well, that brings up something else I've always been curious about. When a player hits a whammy, are they watching the whammy graphic on the big board and that's why they can interact with it?
Yeah, so the way that works is actually there's two things that are happening at the same time that you, the home viewer, don't see, but audience members get to see. Is number one, there is a big LED wall behind the contestants on the contestant island, right? Usually just shows the Press Your Luck logo. But because the island turns around so the contestants can face the board, the audience kind of has an obstructed view of the board. And we want to get their genuine reactions to when they hit big bucks and stuff like that. So what they did is they took out the logo, since you never see it, and they put a little digital feed in that box. So they basically have the logo still there, but then they would overlay the program feed so the studio audience could see what was happening if for whatever reason they had a bad spot or whatever. Then for the contestants, that whole big board is LED. The whole thing is LED panels. So the little bottom tail part that is just like the little extensions, it's more of just like for decoration really, where they show that gold and brown light bulbs. That's where they put in the whammy. They don't want it to look like the contestants are looking down. Obviously, they want the contestants to look straight on. So they found a spot in the game board at the bottom there below the main game where they could insert the program feed and put the whammy on top of it so that it looks like they're just looking straight ahead, but they're actually watching themselves interact with the whammy. That was a fun discussion because they were like, we need to find a place on the board where it doesn't look like they're obviously looking down. Well, there's only so much real estate on that board you can put something. So I think because we didn't control the graphics that were just those little bulbs, so that was from Video Village. So I think Video Village just found a spot that they could put it in and see it. There is also, and you can see it, especially in the second season now, there is actually like a little contestant display that is in the inside of the bunker. We just call that the bunker, where they can see their score, but in front of them. So they're seeing the exact display that we see as viewers, but just mirrored so that they can see it. So they know exactly how many spins they have, how many whammies they have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You could really see it in season 2 because Elizabeth did this thing in season 2 where she loved to dance as the turntable was going. So it was just this running joke that we were like, all right, so what dance is Elizabeth going to do today? So they would end up leaving that in to where you would see kind of like an exposed view of the inside of that bunker where you could actually see the score panel.
Also, how long does it take to remove the main platform for when you get ready for the bonus round?
This is going to blow your mind. 5 minutes.
Really?
5 minutes. That's all it takes. It takes longer to unplug the cables than it does to move the entire set piece. But I will tell you this, it takes about 10 to 15 stagehands to move that thing. But when they do move it, it actually lives right behind the big board. So little fun fact. The main island, when we go to the end game, it is actually just staged right behind the big board, which is where the end game island is sitting during the main game. I know like when we first started taping, when everybody was trying to figure out their groove and how long everything took, it took probably about 10 minutes, but I think they got it down to like 5 minutes. It was really fast.
Next, I want to talk about Deal or No Deal because you were the contestant manager for the 2018 CNBC revival of Deal or No Deal. So for the listeners who aren't familiar with the role of a contestant manager, why don't you describe what your job entailed?
Basically, from the moment the contestants left their house to the moment that they go back to their house, I am responsible for everything that happens while they're here. So you have the contestant producers and a travel coordinator. They're the ones that kind of lay us on with booking all the travel information and whatnot. But then when they arrive in Orlando, because we were taping that at Universal Studios, strangely enough, when they arrive in Orlando, I would make sure that we would arrange for them to have like a PA go and pick them up from the airport, take them over to the hotel, get them checked in. I would usually give them a call after they get settled in saying, hey, we can't wait to have you, get them kind of just amped up and ready for the next taping day. Really, truthfully, the contestant producers were really the ones that were all about, here's how the game works and this and that. I was kind of just like the peppy cheerleader. And because of my cruise director experience working on cruise ships, it was kind of just a natural fit where it was like, hey, can I get you guys anything? Is everything good? And they're like, no, we're great. And then it'd be like, well, make sure you bring this with you because it's Orlando. It rains every day at 3:00. So it was more of facilitating their movement up until the moment they got on stage. The moment they got up on stage, contestant producers took over. And then the moment they finished and they signed their paperwork, whether they won $1 million or a penny, they would sign paperwork on that, which I think is the funniest thing in the world. And then I would kind of arrange them to go back to their hotel and make sure their family members are all situated. Honestly, the hardest part of that was we would have surprise supporters, because that was one of the things on Deal is that, oh, we brought your mother. And I can't tell them that I'm secretly bringing their mother. So we would have to book them a separate flight, and I would have to make sure they're staying in a different hotel and that they never cross paths. That was a logistical challenge because I think we had about 50 people that I was responsible for, including all their supporters. And that would include all the backup contestants that we had as well. And then we also had surprise celebrities and stuff like that. I think we had Penn Jillette on, which was really cool because I was a huge fan of Penn and Teller. So to get him was really cool. So I tried not to fanboy out too much. But then his wife and then his kids were coming with them. So we made sure we put them in a nice room and made sure they had all the transportation taken care of and all that fun stuff. And then, honestly, once they went out on stage with Howie, I would just kind of stand backstage if I didn't have any other contestants to worry about for that day. And I would just watch them play. And that was probably the most fun because that is a nerve-wracking game.
It certainly is a nerve-wracking game. And as a contestant manager, Lee, when you see a contestant win a lot of money, and there were some big winners on the CNBC version of Deal or No Deal, despite it only lasting 31 episodes, does that make you feel extra special because you played a role in their life-changing experience?
Oh my gosh, yes. Because I had never done anything quite in that capacity before. So I was really surprised at how kind of attached you get to these people because you're dealing with them pretty much from the entire time they leave their house. So you get to know these folks really quick, and then they'll go on stage and they have a great story and they're winning a lot of money, and then they open up one of the big ones, and it literally just feels like you told my grandma that she can't have $500,000 anymore. It was extra gut-wrenching. And there were also moments like when the show would finish and they would sign their paperwork with the attorneys and whatnot, and then I would have to come in. And obviously, I would know the outcome of the show because I would need to know how to react accordingly. Like, if it was a big win, I'd be like, oh my God, you won $750,000, give them a big hug or whatever. But then if it was like, if they got $5, those were some of the hardest moments to fake in my life. Because you don't want anybody to feel bad. You had a great experience. You got to be on national television. But man, deep down inside, I'm like, man, you're walking away with $5. That'll barely get you a taxi home. Even on just the current capacity that I'm in right now, I root for the contestants like there's no tomorrow. But being a contestant manager I felt like I was their uncle.
The biggest winner on the CNBC version of Deal or No Deal was Courtney Schloud, who won $500,000. Brad fact.
The offer now is $425,000. Courtney Schloud, deal or no deal?
I would like to counter offer for $500,000.
Can I ask you something? Before she calls back, and that's in. That's in. You can't change that. That's in. That is in. Why did you do that?
She wants me gone.
Right? But this can also have $100 in it.
Correct. My heart is telling me counter at 500.
All right.
That's all you
You
need.
just handed the game over to her. It's in her control. Let's see what she says. Hello. All right. Okay.
Courtney, shake it out.
Okay. She said Courtney asked me to take $500,000 for what's in that case. And she said, so I look at the board. And I say to myself, well, there's a 2 out of 3 chance that the case is only worth 400 or 100. There's a better chance it's not worth the million. She said, why would I do that? Why?
She wants my million in this case.
But there's a 2 out of 3 chance that that isn't the million.
The beauty of the game.
She said, deal.
Do you remember interacting with Courtney before or after her game?
Yeah, that was the Happy Courtney Day episode, if I remember that correctly, because I think her story was she wanted this big celebration because she's never had like a proper birthday party or something like that. Gosh, I can't remember the story. But yeah, she and I regularly talk on Facebook. She is such a sweetheart. She'll always be like, hey, I found this old picture of us. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And we did that back in 2018. And again, it's about creating a very unique moment for these contestants. A lot of people, they come on, they do their thing, and we all go home and we get our checks at the end of the day. But for me, it's like, I want people to understand that this is what I would want as a contestant. You know what I mean? Like, I'm kind of living vicariously through them. So I want them to have the best experience possible. So I would become friends with these folks. And unfortunately, the thing that I couldn't do with the contestants too much is I couldn't fraternize with them because obviously we didn't want it to seem that I'm having an unfair interaction. Basically, you don't want to pay more attention to one contestant than you would another contestant. You want everybody to have the same experience. And one of the things that we would do is I would tell all the contestants, look, I know we've become friends and I'm glad you did well, but you can't associate with me in any sort of a social media platform until your episode airs, which is common practice. It's just kind of something that happens. But man, it would kill me. I'm like, oh man, I wonder what Courtney's up to, because she was so cool. She's so nice. We also had Tony Oriente. And I think Tony Oriente, if I remember correctly, was he the bingo caller? He was the bingo caller. All right. So his whole shtick was he was a bingo caller. So what they did is when he was choosing his cases, he had bingo balls that had each one of the numbers of the suitcases. So they had a little bingo cage out for him, and he would roll the cage around and then he'd pull out a number and he'd be like, okay, 16. And that was fun because you want to talk about the game genuinely being random. He didn't even know what numbers he was picking. And he agreed to it. He wanted to do this little bingo caller gag because he was a bingo caller. And I was just like, man, that is a risky thing to do. Is just literally randomly pull numbers from thin air.
Okay, you ready? These cases need opening, and I just know the person to do it. Tony Oriente, come on up. How are you? How you doing? Great. Good to meet you. Feel along? How are you?
Howie, I am fantastic. I have been watching you for so many years. This is my all-time favorite game show.
Me too.
You are my all-time favorite game show host.
Whoa.
Yes.
Well, thank you. And you realize that this is Deal or No Deal. I'm noticing bingo, but
yes. Actually, my favorite pastime is playing bingo. For many years, I was a bingo caller.
Really?
Yes. So, for fun, can I pick my cases with this.
You could do whatever you want.
Okay. Alex, you ever played bingo before?
Many times.
Many times?
Yes.
I'm no good at it, but our first number up, if everybody has their cards ready, we have number 5.
One of the things that I was always impressed with is that contestants would come on and they would have a strategy. If I get a bank offer that's $64,000, I'm taking it no matter what. And then without fail, every single time they would go on stage, this would happen every time, their offer would be $234,000 and they'd just go, no deal. What happened to $64,000? You said you were going to walk away. No, they just get so caught up in the moment. It's such a genius game for it being such a simple game. Pick a number, you get whatever's inside.
Were you surprised the Deal or No Deal revival didn't last that long despite the original series being very successful? Or even though 10 years had gone by since the primetime version went off the air, do you think it was too soon to bring back Deal or No Deal?
I was just about to say, it had been over 10 years since the original Deal or No Deal. So I think enough time had passed. I think personally, it should have aired on NBC instead of CNBC. I get the idea why they aired it on CNBC, because CNBC is a money show, and obviously Deal or No Deal is all about money and making deals and stuff like that. I get it, but it should have been on NBC. Because when you think of CNBC, you don't think of game shows, unfortunately. And it was a very faithful reboot. It looked great. It felt great. It felt like it never went off the air and it kind of just naturally progressed. I loved the idea for the reboot where you could counter offer. I thought that was a very underutilized skill that a lot of contestants just kind of willy-nilly threw away. It was a great reboot. The moment that I had heard that they said that we had done 2 seasons of Deal or No Deal, I went, no, we didn't. We did 31 episodes. CNBC had cut them in half and decided to do a spring run and then like a fall run. And that's when I knew, I was like, we're not coming back for a second season, because that was basically the kiss of death.
You said that you liked the counter-offer element added to the revival of Deal or No Deal, which I enjoyed as well, but I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on the new cash out or continue playing element added to the Super Sweep portion of the Supermarket Sweep reboot.
I love it. I hear a lot of people's concerns where it's like it totally just stops gameplay, but I like that. It's different. It does not follow the traditional formula of what a bonus game should be. I love the fact that you still play the Super Sweep, which is the 3 items in 1 minute. But the catch is, if you have any time left over, you can be a greedy little boy or greedy little girl and go for more money. But if you do, you got to forfeit what you've won so far. It is a fabulous mechanic that is so great. I would be very curious to see, once coronavirus gets out of the picture as far as production is concerned, I would love to see Supermarket Sweep with an audience, because I think they would really get into it. Leslie was so into, were they going to play or were they going to walk away? The only thing, tell me if I'm wrong here, they would always say, do you want to cash out or do you want to keep playing, right? That was the verbiage that they used. If you're in a supermarket, shouldn't you say, do you want to check out?
Exactly. That's what I said too.
I had thrown that out into the ether. I had said, maybe it should be checkout. And they're like, but they're not buying anything. I went, I know they're not buying anything, but call it checkout. Just get a little something. I'll tell you something really interesting about Supermarket Sweep. And it's something that unfortunately you don't really see on camera too much. So the clock on the wall, there's a clock up near the bakery section, and it's disguised to look like the wall when there's no clock on it. But any other time, there is a clock. Fun fact, that is actually the Double Dare clock, but skinned to a white color and able to do minutes and seconds. But it's the same exact animation, same everything. I was really digging the idea because they were like, no, it's just supposed to look like a wall, and then the clock will kind of just appear out of nowhere. And we're like, okay, we got it. And then they sent us a rendering of what they wanted the clock to look like because they had a graphics company do it. And we're like, well, wait a minute. We have a clock that already does that looks just like this. All we have to do is change the color palette. So work smarter, not harder. We just changed the Double Dare clock from yellow to white. And I think we made it to where it will do minutes and seconds. But other than that, it's the same exact clock. And I'm like, wow, that's great. And unfortunately, you can't see it. You very rarely will see it.
Last but not least, let's talk about Quaranstream, the game show. And Lee, for the listeners who might not know what Quaranstream, the game show is, why don't you describe it for them?
So Quaranstream was actually born out of, obviously, the events of COVID-19 and quarantine and the pandemic and whatnot. Originally, the idea was I was looking for a way to be able to be social with friends and play games and stuff. And I had gotten the idea of doing live streaming because I had seen people on Twitch do video games and stuff like that. But I suck at playing video games. I have fun doing it, but I'm no good at it. And I was like, it would be kind of fun to develop the first at-home game show that is live to play. Not like Confetti or an HQ, but a traditional 30 minutes to an hour game show. And like I said, it started as an idea of just me and a couple of friends goofing off, being silly to pass the quarantine. And then what I started noticing originally when we were doing this on Facebook is that my colleagues would start coming in and playing along. Like, this is really fun. This is really cool. So then it just snowballed into how far can we go with this idea? And we did the first run, which was in the middle of the pandemic. So I think I did shows on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then when we started doing production again, obviously I had to change that. So I kind of went on a bit of a hiatus doing Quaranstream. But it's really, at its essence, a way to interact. We've got people that play the game in like the Philippines and Indonesia, our neighbors up north in Canada. Talk about an idea that was like, this is just to cure some boredom. And then it turned into a whole idea onto itself.
And one of the really exciting elements of Quaranstream, the game show, is that the theme music was composed by Dan Vitco, who composed the theme music for the classic Nickelodeon game shows Nick Arcade and Get the Picture. So Lee, talk about how you managed to get Dan Vitco to record the theme music for you.
It's obvious at this point that I'm a huge Nickelodeon nerd, and I loved the sound of Nickelodeon in the 90s. And when I started mulling over the idea of bringing back Quaranstream for another run, because production was starting to wind down a little bit, I had a little extra time to put back into it. But of course, in good game show fashion, if you're going to do a second season, so to speak, you need to create new elements, something to entice people to come back. And so I think I was using some royalty-free music or something like that. And I was just like, it doesn't give Quaranstream any personality or any flavor. And then I started going down this rabbit hole of like, wouldn't it be really cool if I could get somebody who did like Nickelodeon music in the 90s to come and do the Quaranstream music? And I immediately went to Dan Vitco because I loved the sound for Get the Picture. It's so cheesy, 90s synth horns and random beat whoops and sound effects and stuff. And then the work that he did with Mark Schultz on Nick Arcade as well. The music has such a unique identity to it. I went to the Google machine and put in Dan's name. I found his website, and I will never forget this. I sent him a message and I said, hey, I am just a private citizen. I am just doing this live stream for myself and a couple of friends. It's a game. Would you be interested in doing the music? And we struck a deal with that. And I think he knocked out that project in like 2 weeks. And the really cool thing about that is that he used the same patches that he did in the 90s. So the synth horns in my version of the Quaranstream theme are the same synth horns that you would have heard in Get the Picture. So it created a sense of nostalgia, but it be fresh. He did such an incredible job with that. And he'll come and play the game, which is crazy to me. Like, he'll just come in and crash the show sometimes and he'll just start playing along. I'm like, Dan, if you want a mask, I'll give it to you. You did the music for me. I know I paid you for it, but I can send you a mask. It's not a big deal. But he nailed it. He's like, what do you want the music to sound like? And I had literally just said, make it sound like nostalgic Nickelodeon 90s, what you were known best for, but make it brand new. And he would send me emails like, oh, I came up with this really cool guitar riff. And then he would send me like little samples of it. And I remember the first time he sent me the sample of the theme song, I geeked out. It was so old school Nickelodeon. And then I was like, well, we've got to get Dan to do a question on Quaranstream because, you know, we did this big relaunch and the music and everybody was loving it. And so I found out that Dan also did some of the background music for Clarissa Explains It All. Specifically, he was the guy who created the little guitar riff when Sam would come up and get into Clarissa's room. Clarissa would go, hey, Sam, and you'd hear that little well. That was Dan.
Hi, Sam.
It turns out Dan still has that guitar. And so I think I wrote him a question to read, which was, which of these is higher? The number of Nas in the opening theme of Clarissa Explains It All, or the number of Nas in the original studio recording of the Beatles' Hey Jude? And it was actually closer than I thought it was going to be, but Clarissa was slightly more. And he was like, you know what would be great? maybe I should bring out the guitar and play the little Hey Sam riff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, please. I was like, I'm just happy you're doing the question. And he did this video where he's like, I made this little sound you may be familiar with. And everybody just geeked out on the stream. I was trying not to just be giddy on stream, but it was so funny.
Aside from Dan Vitco composing the music, Quaranstream the game show definitely feels like an online version of a classic Nickelodeon game show, from the colors to the graphics to even you as a host. So Lee, was that your goal for Quaranstream the game show? To make the vibe feel like a current version of a 90s Nickelodeon game show?
Yes and no. Like what we talked about in the beginning, my inspiration really to get into television was Nickelodeon in the 90s. I was just enamored with that. But when we started doing Quaranstream, especially in the first run with it before Dan did the music and we were just using generic music, it really was just kind of a live stream and I kind of had to find my way through it. But I guess through working at the Nickelodeon Resort and everything else, you just kind of pick up little characteristics and traits along the way. And it just kind of evolved into, wow, this actually kind of sounds like something you would see kind of on Nickelodeon in the 90s, but we're all grown up. So then that's kind of when I was like, if I'm going to have my own music, I want to do it right. So then that's when I reached out to Dan and we made a deal for him to do the music. And then it just ended up sounding so incredibly nostalgic and Nickelodeon-esque. It kind of just inadvertently evolved into, yeah, this is kind of something you would see on Nickelodeon in the 90s. But the gag here is we're all grown up. We're all adults now. Really, Quaranstream is meant for you to have 45 minutes to an hour where you can forget about all the doom and gloom that's going on in the world right now. And that is something that game shows create a very prominent niche in the ability to be able to do something like that. And I don't get paid to do the show. We don't have advertisers. We literally just do it out of the goodness of our hearts. But it's absolutely insane because you take all the experience that you have working on various shows and you see what works and what doesn't work. And then being able to kind of have full creative control over your product. You know, it's something that's very inspiring for me. And it's just a fun creative outlet for me to goof around and be silly. And believe it or not, people watch it.
As a game show superfan, I'm sure you've created your own game show formats for fun throughout your life. But as you were creating Quaranstream the game show, did you really challenge yourself to come up with a format that would not only be fun for viewers to play along to, but would also be easy enough to produce and write content for?
Yes. The funny thing about Quaranstream was when I started to do live streaming, we were doing it on Facebook. And I think originally I had 20 questions lined up, because that was kind of the way that we did trivia on the cruise ships back in the day. So I figure, you know, that's the most comfortable thing for me. And then I realized coming up with 20 brand new questions Monday, Wednesday, Friday, that was exhausting. So then we cut it down to 10, and that was still just really exhausting. So then we went to 5. Originally, the game that we played is not the game that we play now. Originally, I played a game where basically I put in a common phrase that you would typically search Google for. For example, one was, is it possible to eat too much, ... And then I would let the autocomplete take over, and I would take a screenshot of the autocompletes. And then what I would do is I would pull 2 of them that were actually on the list, but then I would make up a third one, and then everybody had to pick which one was the one that I made up. So that was originally what we did for Quaranstream. But then I couldn't come up with any more phrases. I'm like, man, this is hard. So then I think I just decided, what if it was a numbers game? Because here's the thing. I suck at trivia. I hate bar trivia. I always feel so stupid when I go and play bar trivia. I know I'm not the only one. And there are some people that do really great at bar trivia. I am not one of those people. So then I thought, well, if I were to play this game as a viewer, what would I want to play? And then I had come up with the idea of basically the whole tagline of the show is you don't have to know anything to win, which is true because I give you a question like which of these is higher, the number of sesame seeds on a McDonald's sesame seed bun or the number of calories in a Big Mac beef patty, for example. It's one of those things that you are definitely not going to know the answer straight away, but you have a good idea because you can visualize it. So I loved that idea of you may not know the exact answer. And if you do, God bless you, good for you. But for all of us that don't know random bits of trivia, you still have a shot at playing and you still have a shot at winning. And that's how it kind of evolved. And the end game that we play now originally wasn't there in the first version because if I had a tie, I think I had 10 envelopes, physical envelopes in my hand. And they had numbers ranging 1 from 10, and whoever picked the higher number broke the tie and won. It was a one and done deal. And then we had developed, along with my buddy Christopher, we created the new endgame idea of what if we put cards behind each of the letters in the word Quaranstream and they have to build up to 100 points. So basically, it's kind of just blackjack, but you go to 100 instead. But it really amazes me how much people get into it. And I'm always constantly surprised at what I think would be an easy question that a lot of people end up getting wrong. And like I said, the one thing that I learned very quickly starting to do live streaming, and I had never done anything like this before. This is so far out of my comfort zone to do live streaming. Like, how the heck do you even begin with that? So I kind of taught myself everything. And then the one cool thing about it, though, was that it was kind of like, well, we tried this. This didn't work. Let's try it another way. So it kind of became like a giant experiment in a way. Of like, well, what if we tried it like this? Oh, let's try it like this on the next show. And then eventually we found a format that we solidified and came up with. But then going back to when we were talking about Deal or No Deal, I just want people to have an experience that I would be excited to have as a contestant. So again, it's a mirror reflecting back. I want everybody who's playing to have as much fun as I am. And if I'm not having any fun, then nobody else is having fun. And it's a reflection. So then when I thought, let's do the music, let's go for the most absurd thing we could possibly do in 2020. Because the one thing that we've all learned in 2020 is that was a decade of a year. But I was like, you know what? If I'm going to do something like this, it's going to be now. And I wanted people to have a unique experience. And we try to follow the norms of what you would typically experience on a game show, because there are a lot of people that aren't going to be able to make it out to LA or New York to be able to be on a game show. So let's pick up that experience, make it genuine and make it authentic and give it to people from their comfort of their own home. And it's so much fun to be able to goof off and just be an idiot for 45 minutes. And people go, I had a lot of fun.
And Lee, as someone who has created and hosts an original online game show, do you see the future of new and original game show formats and content shifting from standard television to online interactive platforms?
That's actually a really interesting discussion. Like if you go on Twitch right now and you pull up any channel at random, 99.9% of the time, you are going to see someone playing a video game, right? That's just what the Twitch platform is. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's very successful and it makes lots of people lots of money. What I thought was, why do game shows have to be on television? And HQ started to get there with the idea, so did Confetti and a couple of other shows. But there's a unique level of interactivity that you will not get with any game show that's currently on television. And that's the fact that I can interact directly with the audience and the players, and everything you see is in real time. We're not faking. There is no do-over. If I make a mistake, we're going to have to fix it on the fly, which happens quite often on my stream because I have fat fingers and I hit the wrong button 99% of the time, which is ironic considering what I do. And I've even noticed a lot of friends and colleagues do virtual game nights because of lockdown. So I see a lot of people on Zoom playing Jackbox and stuff like that. And I think that's so much fun. But then what if you just made it a game show? Take away the video game element of it and just do something you're passionate about. You'll never work a day in your life. And that's what I wanted to illustrate doing live streams. And by no means is Quaranstream a big hit and it's thousands of people. That's far from the case. But it's a fun way to forget about everything that's going on in the world and get an authentic experience from people that know how the experience works. It's not just somebody who is just a casual armchair observer and I'm going to make a game show. There's certain things you just don't think about. We came up with a really awesome old school Saturday morning cartoon style animated opening sequence. And I hired an animation company to do that. And that was such a fun learning experience, figuring out what their lingo and their world is and my world and how we all kind of came together with that. I mean, do I need to do that on a live stream? No, not really. But it's production quality. And it's something that you would expect to see on a real show. So it's only appropriate that we do it. If you're going to do it right. And I think you're going to see maybe not necessarily existing intellectual properties coming over to streaming platforms, but I do think you'll see these virtual game night ideas becoming more and more frequent. I know a couple of people that play a weekly game where they basically kind of just play Wheel of Fortune, and it's super fun. And I think once mainstream production companies realize that there's advertising revenue in there, I think that's when it'll start to click with them. But until then, we'll have to wait and see. And hey, who knows? Maybe somebody will buy Quaranstream.
And before we move on, why don't you once again tell the listeners how they can find Quaranstream and play along with the fun?
We stream every Saturday at 5 p.m. Pacific. That's 8 o'clock on the East Coast. And we stream on twitch.tv/QuaranstreamGame. We also have Facebook, facebook.com/QuaranstreamGame. And then we go live for about an hour. It's just a game for fun. I mean, yes, there are prizes that I give away, but it's not like new cars or anything like that. More like a box of Rice-A-Roni.
Now, this is a package of Rice-A-Roni, the one you saute and simmer to flavor perfection. Rice-A-Roni, the San Francisco treat.
It's a lot of fun. We do it every Saturday unless I have something else going on, and then I'll reschedule. And I think we're going to launch an official website soon, hopefully.
And Lee, the last question I have for you is, are there any classic game shows that you hope will be the next 21st century game show reboot?
You know what I would really secretly love to see come back? And I know the license was recently purchased by who I'm not exactly certain on, but the show Feud. And I love saying the name Feud because you have to like rear back and like put a little oomph into it. You just can't say Feud because that's not fun. You got to go Feud when you do it. But man, Tom Kennedy, that was a fun show just to watch. And it's funny because it was the only name of a show that the announcer would have to make a sound. I can't think of any other show where the announcer literally had to go whew, like that. What an earmark on the resume for that.
Close call. Narrow escape. Split-second decision. And $25,000 in cash. A combination guaranteed to make you save. And now here's the star of our show, Tom Kennedy.
Front and center, reporting for duty. Thank you. Hello there. Good to see you all.
I'm sure I could see him sitting down with all the producers at a table going, so is the name of the show Feud? Is it Feud? I'm sure there was a phonetic, like, here's how we want you to say it.
It's such a shame Rod Roddy never got a chance to say another iconic line.
Now, I'm looking over here, and I see green, I see yellow, I see blue, and I see white. That must be Rod Roddy.
It's me?
It is.
Yes.
Who's our player?
Well, let's see. How would you feel if I called down Luann Lyons? Come on down. You're the next contestant on The Price is Right.
I remember when we did Press Your Luck, and oh gosh, I can't remember the gentleman's name that does the announcing for the current version. But gosh, he's been in the industry for a long time. He actually, I think he does voiceovers for a lot of cartoons and stuff. And I remember reading someone where it was like, he's not Rod Roddy. I'm like, well, of course he's not Rod Roddy. Rod Roddy's unfortunately not with us anymore. We can't have like a virtual, though not a bad idea now that I'm thinking about it. Bradley, I think we're on to something.
I think so. And if the virtual Rod Roddy doesn't work, I'll be happy to do my Rod Roddy announcing impersonation.
Get your sequin jackets out, which I know we all have.
How'd you know it's in my closet?
Because I have 4 in every color.
We've only known each other for a couple hours and we're already comparing sequin jacket collections. Lee, I would say this friendship is definitely off to a good start.
Truth be told, and I hope you keep this in, this is actually the first time we've ever talked to each other. This isn't one of those, oh, you've known me from other things and you were like, oh, this would be cool. Hey, we should do this sometime. No, this is legitimately the first time we're getting to know each other.
This is true, and isn't it so much fun meeting someone new who just happens to be a diehard game show fan like yourself?
Yes, especially when it's somebody like you and you have such an appreciation for the show, but at the same time, you've also worked on shows at the same time. So the stories that I tell, as absurd or as funny as they may seem, in the back of your head, I'm sure you're going, yeah, that totally happens.
You're absolutely right about that. And the one pet peeve I always have working on game show revivals, and I'm sure this happens to you as well, is when you realize how many people have no idea about the history of the show. Meanwhile, I'm spewing facts left and right about various moments from the show's history.
There are moments where I have to tone down my nerdiness sometimes where it's like, oh, well, again, some people don't know this. It's really funny because on most game shows, the lighting and the video folks, they come from touring shows, like concerts and stuff like that. So, they're not really used to doing game shows. Meanwhile, me here, I'm like, okay, so when the board is animating on Press Your Luck, the lights need to be going and they need to be doing this. And we'll send you a trigger so that they all sync up really nice and pretty. And they're like, so we don't do that? You're doing that? yeah, but I'll send you a trigger and that'll just let you know when to push the button. They're like, oh, this is easy. Usually when other departments see us, they go, oh, thank God. We had a moment on Card Sharks season 1, and the producers were trying to nail down the money cards, right? And they were going through all these different ideas and stuff like that. And they looked at me and they said, what do you think? And Bradley, you know just as much as I know, when someone turns to you, the game show fan, and they go, what do you think? What's your thoughts on this? You know right then and there, do you give them the answer that they want to hear? Or do you give them the answer that you know you should give, which may not necessarily be what they agree with? And I had actually liked what they were doing. And I was like, well, there are other versions of Card Sharks, and there was a UK version. And without missing a beat, one of the producers went, play your cards right. And I went, oh my God, I love you. Yes. They're like, yeah, we're going to try that another variation coming up soon. And I'm like, okay, you're in good hands. I love everything about it.
And at that moment, you should have said, nice to see you.
Oh my gosh, it's nice to see you. Nice. Oh my gosh, Bruce Forsyth. I have to tell you, that man, I don't understand what he's saying half the damn time because his Cockney accent is very thick. But every time he comes out, it's nice to see you. Nice. That is a chef's kiss right there.
Thank you. Oh, how kind. You're lovely. Thank you. Oh, you're lovely. You really are lovely. Thank you again. Oh, what a lovely, lovely audience. You're so much better than last week. They were thick. And then that wasn't the end of it. At the end of last week's show, I went to the studio car park and found my car on blocks. Someone had nicked all my wheels. All 4 of them gone. So I rushed out to the car park attendant's hut and I told him what happened. He said, yes, Mr. Forsyth. He said, but are you sure you had the wheels when you drove in here? Silly old fool. So I walked away and left him lying there, removing my personalised number plate from his person. Anyway, it's nice to see you, And I'm the leader of the pack, which makes me such a lucky jack, and here they are, they're so appealing. OK, dollies, do your dealing. Look at this, look. Oh, they love it. Oh, I tell you. And I hope you're going to play the game at home, play your cards right. As you see, Maxine's dealing out the red cards on the top, and Charlie's dealing out the blue cards on the bottom. Yes.
Well, Lee, we have reached my favorite portion of the game show, and this I hope is going to be a fun experience for you because after so many episodes of creating questions for Quaranstream the game show and hosting Quaranstream the game show, today you get to do a little role reversal and play a game that I created and will host for you. It's time for the game of the day.
Game of the day.
And for today's game of the day, Lee, I thought it would be fun if you got to play a Bradley Clarke original version of a game show that you actually worked on. So I hope you're feeling lucky and can play your cards right.
Oh no, don't do this to me.
Because you are about to play Card Sharks. Card Sharks. So here's how we play this edition of Card Sharks. There's going to be 3 rounds during the main game, and just like on the current ABC version of Card Sharks, your goal is to make your way across the board of 7 cards, predicting if the next card is higher or lower than the one preceding it. For each round, you're going to have a maximum of 5 questions in order to successfully turn over all 7 cards. And the questions are not going to be survey questions, no, but rather game show trivia questions.
Oh, no. Oh, you are evil, and I love every moment of it.
So what's going to happen is I'm going to read you a question and give you an incorrect numerical value. You then have to tell me if the correct numerical value is higher or lower than the number I give you.
Okay.
So a correct answer allows you to play the cards, plus gives you the opportunity to change your base card if you'd like to. However, an incorrect answer means you have to move on to the next question in the round, which means you have just wasted a question.
All right.
The first 2 rounds are worth 2,500 points each. The third round is worth 5,000 points, and after the main game, you'll then play the money cards, and your starting point value for the money cards is whatever points you gained during the main game.
Oh!
And because I wanted to give a nod to the 80s version of Card Sharks hosted by recent guest on the game show Bob Eubanks, if you can accumulate 32,000 points or more during the money cards, you will be deemed a winner. So Lee, are you ready to show off your game show smarts and your inner gambler all at once?
Oh, this is going to be my famous last words, but let's do it.
Then let's play Card Sharks. However, I think we need a proper Card Sharks introduction to officially get the game going. So just for you, Lee, I have created your own Card Sharks opening poem, and it goes like this. The cards will hopefully be in the favor of contestant Lee Eck. If 8s and 9s keep coming up, he'll say, "What the heck?" on Card Sharks.
Oh, I'm in love.
And here's the host of Card Sharks, Bradley Clarke. Thank you, myself. Welcome to Card Sharks.
I'll be your audience. Woo!
And that opening poem was sent in by Bradley Clarke himself. Let's open up the board and get to the cards.
Woo!
And we're going to start with round 1, which is worth 2,500 points. And another incentive to win as many of the 3 main game rounds as possible is, for each round you do win, you'll receive a change card in the money cards portion of the game, which, as you know, can come in handy.
All right.
But before I deal out any cards, you're going to cut the cards. So Lee, 1 through 52, where would you like me to cut the cards?
Oh, I'm really going to cut the cards? Okay, let's go 36.
Number 36 it is, and give me one moment as I cut the cards at number 36 for you.
Now, just imagine having to do this with oversized playing cards. Do you know what Jerry and Alexis have to deal with?
Well, speaking of Jerry and Alexis, who are the card dealers on the new version of Card Sharks, Lee, are you as disappointed as I am that Joel McHale, the host of the show, doesn't actually turn over any of the cards throughout the game?
I don't care. I mean, originally, whenever we started doing the taping, it's like, oh, well, why isn't he doing it? And I'm like, you know what? This isn't meant for me. This is meant for a new generation. And the fact that they mic Jerry and Alexis is great. So I think that's totally fine. They're not just pretty artwork, even though Jerry is very pretty. And he knows he's pretty. Love you, Jerry.
So the cards are now cut, and I have just finished dealing out the top 7 cards from the deck. And Lee, here comes your first question of round 1. What was the total winnings of Michelle Lowenstein, the first Wheel of Fortune contestant to win the $1 million top prize? And this is your incorrect answer. $1,030,340. Is the correct answer higher or lower?
I'm going to say, I think it would be a little bit higher. Yeah, let's go higher.
You're going to say higher, and the correct answer is lower.
Oh, how much was it?
It was $1,026,080. Brad fact.
Good luck. You better go shopping for that dog.
Michelle, it's our biggest payday yet. $1 million.
Look at this. Look at this. You big love you. How did this happen? You know everything that had to happen for that to happen? How you doing? Here, you don't need this. You got the real thing. Wow. Look at that. Look at that. By the way, just consider that a little wedding gift from Wheel. You got it. You know what our total is? $1,026,080.
And $1,030,340, that was actually the total of Wheel of Fortune's second $1 million winner, Autumn Earnhardt, and Wheel of Fortune's all-time winning total. Brad fact! But don't worry, that's only question 1. Here comes question 2. What year did Larry Blyden begin hosting the syndicated version of What's My Line? The incorrect answer is 1974. Is the correct answer higher or lower than 1974?
It's got to be lower. It's got to be earlier than that. Lower.
You say lower, and it is lower, 1972. Larry Blyden took over as host of the syndicated version from Wally Bruner in 1972 and hosted the show until its cancellation in 1975. Brad fact. So, with that correct answer, you now get to go to the cards. Remember, Lee, you can change the base card if you want to, and it's a deuce!
Oh, that's a beautiful card. I'm not going to change that. I'd be crazy. I'm going to go higher.
Higher than a 2. It's a 10. Now, Lee, you can continue to play or you can freeze and protect your position, but if you do play on and you're wrong, you go back to your base card.
Well, in that case, I go back to a 2, which is a great card. 10 is not the worst card in the deck. Wow, you are really making me play my own game against me. I'm going to go with the odds. The next card is lower.
Lower than a 10? It's a 7!
Ooh, ew, that's gross. Freeze.
You're going to freeze on the 7, okay. And we move on to question 3. Remember, the next chance you get the cards, you can change that 7. Here comes question 3 of 5 in this round. On the October 13th, 2006 NBC debut of 1 vs. 100, Jeopardy super champion Ken Jennings was a member of the mob. In what numbered box was Ken standing in?
Wow.
Higher or lower than 21?
That is evil. Okay, so 1 vs. 100 is a Scott St. John production. Knowing Scott, he would either make the celebrity dead center and go 50, or he would make them number 1. I think he would be in the center, though. No, because that wouldn't look clean to him. I'm going to say it's lower.
You're saying lower, and unfortunately, Ken was not in box number 1.
Oh.
He was in box number 13, but that's still lower, so you're correct.
Hey, all right, I'll take it.
So, you have a 7. Would you like to change the 7?
Yes, please.
The 7 is now a 5.
Okay, that's better. And considering we haven't seen any face cards yet, I'm going to say the next card is higher than that 5.
Higher than a 5. A jack.
All right, everybody loves a jack. I'm going to go against the odds. The next card is higher.
Higher than a jack? An 8.
Oh, damn, all these middle cards.
So you go back to the 5, and we go on to question 4 with 4 cards still left to turn over in this round. Used during the 1975 to 1976 syndicated season of Let's Make a Deal, what was the top cash prize a trader could win during the Super Deal? The incorrect answer is $10,000. Higher or lower?
I'm going to say it's lower.
Lower than $10,000. The correct answer is higher.
Wow.
It was $20,000. Brad fact.
This is Super Deal time. If you want to go for the Super Deal and risk everything you have, that is all those gifts and the $4,650, you pick one of our 3 mini doors. Behind one of them, $2,000. Behind another one, $20,000. Behind the third one, well, we keep that as a surprise. If you pick the right one with $20,000, you keep everything you've won so far and the $20,000 for a total of $29,847. If you pick either of the other 2 doors, you don't keep what you got, but you get the cash as a consolation prize. Do you want to go for it, or do you want to hang on to what you got? Talk it over. I'll give you a blow-by-blow report of what's going on, folks. Yolanda says it's up to you. Manuel says $4,650. Ain't bad. She says, on the other hand, you could possibly get 20. He looks at the check. He looks at her. Now she finally says, you make up your mind. We turn to Manuel and say, Manuel, what's it going to be?
We'll go for it.
You're going to go for it? You're going to risk everything and go all the way? All right. Here's where they risk $9,850. And which mini door do you take?
3.
Number 3. What's behind number 3? $20,000. And you keep the $9,847 for a total of $29,847. Congratulations to you.
Dang. Okay. All right. That's fine. That's okay.
Well, you have 1 question left, so you can still get this, but you need to get this in order to have a chance to win the round.
Or else I go down in the pool of my own tears.
And here comes your question. On the 1979 to 1980 Monty Hall hosted version of Beat the Clock, what was the smallest amount of money featured on the bonus shuffle board? The incorrect answer is $200. Was the smallest amount featured on the bonus shuffleboard higher or lower than $200?
It's higher. It's gotta be higher. Yeah, it's higher. It's higher.
You say higher than $200, and it is higher, $300.
All right.
So, you have a 5. Do you want to change the 5?
Yeah, let's change the 5. I'm not feeling so good about that anymore.
The 5 is now a 2.
Hey, even better, higher.
Higher than a 2, a 7.
These middle cards. Well, we still haven't seen a lot of face cards, so I'm going to say next card's higher. It's got to be higher.
Higher than a 7, 4.
What? The deck is rigged. I'm calling Game Show Network.
You unfortunately lost this round, but don't worry, Lee, we still have 2 more rounds to go. And remember, the ultimate goal is to earn 32,000 points in the money cards, so don't get discouraged at all. We're now going to move on to round 2, and I'm now dealing out the next 7 cards off the top of the deck. Round 2 is also worth 2,500 points, and here is your first of 5 questions. On the short-lived CBS game show Winning Lines, hosted by Dick Clark, how many total contestants were featured at the beginning of each episode? The incorrect answer is 40. Is it higher or lower?
I'm going to have to just go with the odds at this point. Higher.
You said higher than 40, and the odds were in your favor. It's 49, so it is higher.
All right.
So we now go to the cards. Your base card is a 3.
Well, considering we've had 2 deuces before, I'm going to say the next card is higher.
Higher than a 3, a 6.
That's okay. Still haven't seen a lot of face cards. I'm going to say next card's higher.
Higher than a 6, it's a jack.
Here's that jack again. We've had 2 jacks. And last time I sat here, I said, I'm going to go against the odds. We've had a lot of middle cards. And as we've said, you got to risk it to get that biscuit. I'm going to say the next card is higher than the jack.
Going against the odds again, higher than a jack, 10.
Oh, it's kind of the same. Add another 10 to it. It's higher.
Tell that to Goodson Todman when they were saying, if it's 2 jacks that come up, they lose.
Sorry about your problem. All right, I go back to the 3, but I had to do it. This is giving me information of what's no longer in the deck. That's all.
This is all very true, and here comes your second question of the second round. Before becoming famous on Jeopardy and becoming a chaser himself, James Holzhauer was a contestant on the GSN version of The Chase. How much money did James earn during his cash builder, which is also the amount of money he banked for his team during the solo chase portion? And the incorrect answer is $50,000. Is it higher or lower than $50,000?
I know he set a record for that. It's higher. It's got to be.
You said higher than $50,000, and it is higher, $60,000.
Okay. Wow, you like cutting these razor close.
That brings out the suspense.
You know me too well, even though this is our first time talking.
You have a 3.
All right. Welcome back to the beginning, Lee. Let me go higher than the 3.
Higher than the 3. It's a 9.
We've had so many middle cards. The next card's got to be higher.
Higher than a 9. 10.
Ah, to heck with it. Higher.
Going against the odds. Higher than a 10. It's a queen.
Hey! Okay. All right. We're moving. We're grooving. How many cards do I have left?
You have 3 cards left, and there are 3 questions remaining in this round.
In that case, I will freeze.
I think that's a smart move. I probably would have froze as well. So we'll protect your position on the queen, Lee, with 3 cards to go. And here is question 3 of round 2. On the Price is Right's Plinko board, there are 9 total spaces a Plinko chip could land in. During a current regular playing of Plinko, what is the total amount of money of all 9 Plinko slots added up? And the incorrect answer is $15,000. Is it higher or lower than $15,000?
I bought the at-home board game, and I took apart the board. Dang it. I literally took it apart last week because I was just running out of space. Or I would have just nonchalantly glanced over. $15,000, you said, huh?
I did.
The correct answer is lower.
You said lower than $15,000, and it is lower. Do you know what the exact number is?
It's 10,000 in the middle. The hundreds are on the outside because they mirror each other. So that means it would be 10,000 in the middle plus the hundreds on either side. So that's 10,200. And I think it goes up to like 500. So that'd be another 1,000. So that's 11,200. And I think there's thousands next to that. So that would make it 13,200.
That is absolutely right. $13,200. Yeah, 100 plus 500 plus 1,000 plus 0 plus 10,000 plus 0 plus 1,000 plus 500 plus 100 is 13,200. Brad fact. So you have a queen. You can change the card if you want to.
No. Let's see. Only a queen and a king and an ace would hurt me. We have not seen a lot of those cards. In fact, this is the highest card we've seen so far. However, there are 4 of each card. I'm going to say the next card is lower than the queen.
Lower than a queen? 6.
Ugh, gross. Well, if I get it wrong, I fall back on the queen. That's totally fine. The next card's higher.
Higher than a 6? 7.
Oh my gosh. This is the last card, right?
This is the last card, and you have 2 questions.
Go big or go home. The next card is higher.
For 2,500 points and a change card in the money cards. Higher than a 7? Jack, you got it!
Yes!
So, Lee, you have 2,500 points. You also have a change card for the money cards, and now I'm going to deal out the next 7 cards off the top of the deck for your third and final round. This round is worth an additional 5,000 points. And Lee, here comes your first question. On the 2006 to 2007 Dylan Lane hosted Chain Reaction on GSN, including the starting word and the ending word, how many total words make up a chain during each main game round? And the incorrect answer is 8. Higher or lower?
I can literally hear him do his little spiel once he runs down the answers. I want to say 8 is way too high, because that would just take too long to say. My instinct says the answer is lower. I say it's lower.
You say lower than 8? And it is lower! The correct answer is 7.
Okay, not by much, but enough.
Yeah, on the 2006 to 2007 Chain Reaction, the chains consisted of the starting word, the ending word, and 5 words in between. However, the chains on the 1980 Bill Cullen hosted version of Chain Reaction on NBC featured 8 total words, the starting word, the ending word, and 6 words in between. Brad fact. And Lee, you're starting off round 3 with a 3.
Okay. Well, this is deja vu all over again. I'm going to say the next card is higher than the 3.
Higher than a 3. 8.
Haven't seen a lot of face cards. Next card's higher.
Higher than an 8? No, it's a 2.
What? You're going to run out of mid cards.
I think so. But at least you're going back to a 3. That's not bad. And here comes your second question. On Classic Concentration, hosted by Alex Trebek from 1987 to 1991, how many seconds was the base time for the bonus round car matching game? And the incorrect answer is 40 seconds.
Correct answer is lower. No thought about it.
You know what it is?
I want to say it's 25 or 30.
Well, it is not 25 or 30. It's 35, but it is lower.
Okay. All right. I'll take it.
Every time a car was won, the next contestant who played the bonus round started with a base time of 35 seconds. Each time the car wasn't won, 5 additional seconds was added to the time. Brad fact. You have a 3.
I'm going to say the next card's higher.
Higher than a 3. It's a 5.
You are going to run out of middle cards. Next card is higher.
Higher than a 5. It's an ace. That's what we like to see.
Finally. Lower.
Lower than the ace. I don't believe it. It's another ace.
I knew it. I knew another ace was going to pop up. I knew it.
So it's back to the 3 again, Lee. And here comes question 3 in round 3. Complete the title of a long-running British general knowledge quiz show. Blank to 1. And the incorrect answer is 20.
I have absolutely no idea on this. I want to say it's like 100 to 1, like your odds are 100 to 1 or 50 to 1. 20 to 1, I could see that. But I'm going to have to go just purely on odds at this point. I'm going to say the correct answer is higher.
Higher than 20. It's actually lower.
Wow, is it really? Is it like 10 to 1?
It's 15 to 1. 15 to 1 ran from January 11th, 1988 to December 19th, 2003, and again from April 5th, 2014 to June 28th, 2019. Brad fact.
Wow.
And we go on to question 4. 2 questions left. On the short-lived ABC game show $1 Million Mind Game, hosted by Vernon Kay in 2011, how many players were featured on a team? The incorrect answer is 5. Lee, is the correct answer higher or lower than 5?
I vaguely remember hearing something about this show, because, I mean, there were so many on around this time. I'm going to say that the answer is higher.
You're saying higher than 5, and there were 6 members on the team. You're correct.
Thank God.
All right, still have a 3.
Higher than a 3.
Higher than a 3. 8.
Higher than the 8.
Higher than an 8. It's a 9.
Higher than the 9.
Higher than a 9. No, 5.
That's like the 8th 5 you pull.
I can promise you this is a standard deck. There are only 4 5s in there. All right, here's where we are, Lee. This is question 5, and in order to have a chance to win the 5,000 points and the additional change card for the money cards, you need to get this question correct. And speaking of the question, here it is. On the Fox primetime version of Don't Forget the Lyrics, hosted by Wayne Brady from 2007 to 2009, including the $1 Million Song, how many total money amounts were featured on the show's Money Ladder? And the incorrect answer is 9. Is the correct answer higher or lower than 9?
Okay. I know the syndicated version, because they did a brief run, it was obviously much shorter. But knowing a typical Fox show, they would stretch that thing out longer than taffy. No, that's higher. I think it's 10.
You say higher than 9, and it is 10, so it is higher.
All right.
Yeah, the money ladder is 2,500, 5,000, 10,000, 25,000, 50,000, 100,000, 200,000, 350,000, 500,000, and the $1 Million Song. Brad fact, you have 6 cards to turn over, starting with the 3.
Well, there's no sense in changing this card anymore. I'm going to say the next card's higher.
Higher than a 3. It's a 7.
I gotta go higher than 7.
Higher than a 7. It's a king.
Thank you. Lower.
Lower than the king. It's an 8.
Wow, these cards. Higher than the 8.
Higher than the 8. No, it's a 4.
No! Just when you think you know how statistically the show is supposed to go, it will always surprise me every single time.
But all is not lost. 2,500 points is what you earned during the main game, so that is what you're going to start the money cards with. And there are no more questions, Lee, so only the luck of the cards can help you win now.
Well, you're going to need all the luck I can get.
We're going to play the money cards with a brand new deck, so I'm going to shuffle the cards now.
That means you'd be like doing tricks behind your head and flipping the cards from one hand to the other hand.
Well, since this is audio, I am doing that.
Exactly. There you go.
And once again, Lee, I will give you the honor of cutting the cards. So what number would you like me to cut the deck at?
I am convinced you have done a very thorough job of shuffling, so I'm going to say 2.
Number 2 it is. And with that quick cut, I will now deal out the top 7 cards for the money cards. I'll start off by giving you the 2,500 points that you earned during the main game. And I'll remind you that 1 change card is available for you to use at any time. With that all taken care of, let's see what your base card is. It's a 10. So, Lee, you have a 10 and 2,500 points, and minimum bets are 100 points.
I'm going to say 1,000 points. The next card is lower than the 10.
Your first bet is for 1,000 points. Lower than a 10? It's a 2!
Oh, beautiful. Give me everything I got. What is that, 3,500 now?
Yep, 3,500 points.
3,500 points. The next card is higher.
Remember, if another 2 comes up, it's a push. No win, no loss. 3,500 points. Higher than a 2? It's a jack, and you have 7,000.
All right. 6,000 points. The next card is lower than the jack.
6,000 points. A big bet on a jack that this card is lower. It's a 5, and you have 13,000.
Yes! All right. How many cards do I have left?
You have 3 cards left. You have 13,000. You still have a change card.
And what am I sitting on right now?
A 5.
Oh, change that card.
Come on, let's get a good change. The 5 is now another 5.
I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. Okay. I'm going to say 7,000. The next card is higher than the 5.
7,000 points. Higher than a 5? 6!
Yes! I am skinning this by the skin of my teeth. All right, so I have 2 cards left.
You have 2 cards left, and you have 20,000 points.
On a 6, and I have no more change cards.
Correct.
Ugh, gross. I am going to say 2,000 points. The next card is higher than the 6.
2,000 points. higher than a 6? It's an 8, and you have 22,000 points.
Okay. Well, we know what we must do.
So, now here's the thing. Typical game show fashion, we have come down to literally the most suspenseful moment we can. We're on the last card. You have 22,000 points. You need to bet at least 11,000 points, which thankfully will get you over the top if you only bet half. You're sitting on an 8. You have no change cards, and you have to bet at least 11,000 on an 8.
Well, you know what? I'm going to save a couple of points just for a little extravaganza I'm going to have a little bit later. I'm going to say 20,000 points. The next card is higher.
Right, so if you do end up losing, at least you didn't lose with nothing.
Exactly. I have a little shred of dignity left.
All right, here we go. 20,000 points for the win. Higher than an 8? 7! Oh!
What? Oh, man! Oh, what a kick!
That was so close, Lee. I'm so sorry. But hey, look at the bright side. You won a round, and you answered many of the trivia questions correctly. So you did really well in the trivia portion of the game, despite your lack of confidence.
Surprisingly better than I thought.
And I have some more good news. Every 5 episodes, I invite back a previous guest on the game show who unfortunately lost their game to participate in a game redemption episode. And it just so happens, Lee, that my next episode is episode number 65, meaning it's going to be another game redemption episode, and I would love to have you join me for a back-to-back playing of Card Sharks if you'd like to participate.
I am totally game for that.
See, in the game show world, there's always something to look forward to.
I am totally in. I must redeem myself.
And not only will you be playing Card Sharks again, but I'll also be creating a brand new game for you to play.
I love it. Give me all the chances not to suck.
But I'm curious, Lee, in your eyes, as someone who has worked on the new version of Card Sharks, did I do the show justice?
Oh my god, yes. I love the fact that in order to accommodate that for a single-player game, you gave me the incorrect number, and it was just higher or lower. I love every bit of that. Now I need to go break out my giant, oversized playing cards.
Well, I'm truly glad that you had fun, Lee, and that you enjoyed the format I created. And that was the game of the day, Card Sharks! Card Sharks! Well, Lee, I have sincerely had so much fun chatting with you about your game show career so far, as well as hosting Card Sharks for you to play. So thank you so much for joining me today as my guest on the game show.
I had such a great time, dude. This was so much fun, and a great way to actually get to know you, too. So it was like a 2-for-1 deal. I had a great time.
Well, it was a pleasure getting to know you as well, Lee. And before you leave, why don't you tell all the listeners about Quaranstream, the game show, one more time?
Sure. Every Saturday, 5 p.m. on the Pacific, 8 p.m. for all of you East Coasters. Twitch.tv/QuaranstreamGame. And then we're also on Facebook, facebook.com/QuaranstreamGame. There on the Facebook page, you can also get links to our Discord and all sorts of other fun, cool things that we're going to be doing. So come and check us out and have some fun, nostalgic ridiculousness with me.
Awesome. Well, once again, Lee, thank you so much for joining me on the game show today, and I look forward to having you join me next time for your game redemption episode.
All right, cool. Awesome. Thank you, my friend.
All right, take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And before I sign off, it's time for another Bradley Parody. Bradley Parody. This is the segment of the game show in which I create a parody song about an aspect of this episode. And because Lee has worked on so many game shows, I had a lot of options when choosing which show I wanted to make a parody about. Should I do one about Press Your Luck? Or maybe Double Dare? Or what about Quaranstream, the game show? Well, if you are hoping for a parody about one of those shows, unfortunately you have to wait a little bit longer because this episode's parody song is about Card Sharks. So, to the tune of Bruce Springsteen's Grammy-winning song, Dancing in the Dark, here is Bradley Parody number 15, simply titled, Card Sharks. The cards are ready for dealing. They were cut and shuffled backstage. Money's what I'll be winning. If Lady Luck and I are on the same page, Joel asked me the first question. I use strategy on my opponent. I said 50. She said higher, but it was 26. A jack is my base card. Instantly in my head is a question mark. Decisions are so hard when you're a contestant on Card Sharks. Should I change my base card? Pressure's on cause you normally don't change a face, but my gut is telling me that my change card is going to be an ace. I take the chance and I change it. The audience is not behind me. It is sadly not an ace, but I improve because it is a 3. I say the next card's higher. Saying lower would be a stupid remark. An ace is what I desire, so I get closer to winning Card Sharks. The next card is a 9. I say lower and hope a deuce shows up, but instead it's a 5. Should I freeze or should I play on? 4 cards are left to turn over. No one's turned 7 in a row before. I might as well say higher and hope the next card's not a 2, 3, or 4. The card is revealed as a queen. I'm more than halfway across the board. I of course say lower. If it's a king, I will really be floored. The next card's a 7. Most players would freeze, but not Bradley Clarke. I'm gonna say higher. You gotta take risks while playing Card Sharks. Is the next card higher? Am I right and am I down to the last 2 cards? The answer you'll acquire listening to part 2 of the Parody Card Sharks. Will I win in part 2 of the Parody Card Sharks? Do I bust in part 2 of the Parody Card Sharks? Find out in part 2 of the Parody Card Sharks. It's revealed in part 2 of the Parody Card Sharks. Sometimes the Bradster likes to add a little twist to the game show, and this is certainly one of those moments. For the first time ever, I have created a 2-part parody. That's right, the official title of the Bradley parody you just heard is Card Sharks Part 1. Now, I know what you're asking yourself. When can I hear Card Sharks Part 2? Well, the good news is, as you heard, Lee will be returning to the game show on my next episode to participate in his game redemption episode. So you'll find out if the next card is indeed higher than a 7 when Card Sharks Part 2 debuts on the next episode of the game show. I know, the suspense is killing you, but just compare this to a great game show cliffhanger. And that was this episode's Bradley Parody. Bradley Parody. Well, that supermarket sweep beep means we have unfortunately reached the end of this episode of the game show. My thanks once again to the creator and host of Quaranstream the game show and game electronics genius, Lee Eck, for joining me today. And I look forward to having Lee join me again on the next episode to try and redeem himself playing Card Sharks. Plus, as I said, I'll also have a brand new game for Lee to play that I know he will enjoy playing and you will enjoy listening to. Now, I've actually had a few guests on the game show who have worked on some of the game shows that Lee has also worked on, including the director of Family Feud, Ken Fuchs, the supervising producer of Card Sharks, Graham Shaw, the supervising producer of Press Your Luck, Chris Ahern, and content producer and researcher on Double Dare, Adam Neediff. To listen to any of these episodes, or to re-listen to this episode featuring Lee Eck, All you have to do is log on to www.soundcloud.com/Bradley_Clarke. That's BRADLEY_CLARKE/sets/The Game Show. That's www.soundcloud.com/Bradley_Clarke. That's BRADLEY_CLARKE/sets/The Game Show. In addition, The Game Show is now on YouTube. That's right, you can listen to all episodes, game segments, Bradley parodies, and more by going on to The Game Show starring Bradley Clarke's YouTube channel. And if you're a loyal friend and true, please remember to like and subscribe. Plus, don't forget to like The Game Show starring Bradley Clarke on Facebook and follow The Game Show starring Bradley Clarke on Twitter using the handle @TheGameShowBC and #TheGameShow. And of course, be sure to tune in next time for another exciting episode of The Talk Show, all about the world of television game and competition shows, The Game Show. I'm Bradley Clarke, the Bradster, and I've got to go work out so I can successfully make it to the top of Mount St. Doubledare. Bye for now.
This edition of The Game Show was created and produced by Bradley Clarke. This is Austin Angelo speaking.
The Game Show is a Bradley Clarke production. Get your game on.